If you get scared easily, now is your time to scroll. Because not only did I need to turn my TV on after reading this story, it actually deleted itself after I was done filming it for the first time. So this is the second time I'm filming this. This is a scary story submission titled My Evil Ex and the Evil That Lived with Him. The woman who sent me this is named Brittany, but the man in this story I will change the name of to John. Literally had to turn my light on for extra measure. Anyways, Brittany and John had been dating for a while, and Brittany had stayed over at John's townhome for the second time. John had to work early in the morning, like around 4 a.m., so they kiss goodbye, he goes to work, she rolls back over to sleep. She says she doesn't know how long she was asleep for, but her eyes shot open suddenly because the bed was shaking violently, like enough for her to feel it. He thinks that the bed shaking is just from him leaving for work, and if you've ever lived in a house like this, you know that sometimes when the garage opens and the door shuts, different parts of the house will shake. She tries to go back to sleep. As she's drifting back to sleep, she hears this loud crashing noise from inside of the bedroom. Mind you, the door is shut at this point, so she's the only person that could possibly be in this room. She sits up in bed and sees that a book that was wrapped in plastic had flown off of the bookshelf. This obviously freaked her out, so she decides to get up and start her day. Specifically notes that her grandmother has always taught her to not feel afraid in these situations, because when you feel fear and you give whatever's trying to taunt you fear, it will continue to do it worse and worse. Brittany gets up, walks to the door, grabs the doorknob, and opens the bedroom door. Immediately upon opening the bedroom door is overwhelmingly washed with a feeling of dread. Like something is just not right. The way that this townhouse is set up is you follow a staircase from the front door all the way up until it's basically a half wall. At the top of the stairs, there's like this little crawl space that you can like put things in. It's very open concept from the way that she describes it. So there are no walls dividing anything except his bedroom and the bathroom, of course. Brittany specifically says that this crawl space is large enough where she has actually stood in this crawl space. Anyways, feels like something's standing there, walks 3 steps into the bathroom, tries to pretend like nothing is there. She says usually when she showers, she leaves the door open because it gets too hot in the bathroom, but this particular time, she was so freaked out that she had the door shut and locked. After her shower, she gets her things and goes back to John's room and shuts the door, but is convinced that her mind is just playing tricks on her and that it's just like new place jitters. Chalks it up to being nervous about being alone in this man's townhome for the first time. As she's playing on her phone, she sees something move out of the corner of her eye. Looks up to see that the door to the bedroom is now half open. We're not talking about a door that has like a gap underneath of it. There is carpet underneath this door to the point where when you open it, it leaves a mark on the carpet. Whoever was trying to scare her had to put some oomph behind opening the door. She's staring at the door for like a good 15-20 seconds. The outside handle, and only the outside handle, starts shaking violently as if somebody was holding the doorknob. It scares Brittany so bad that she just screams for it to stop, and it does immediately. She quickly gets dressed, calls John on the phone, and he obviously knows something's up. She doesn't want to draw attention to the situation, so she just texts him, "Do you think your house is haunted?" He responds out loud with, "Is my house haunted?" As this sentence leaves his mouth, she hears something jump down and sprint from the bedroom towards her in the townhome. When she hears that, sprints down the stairs, out the front door, is barefoot, hangs up with John, and calls her grandmother. Because obviously she has to go back in for not only her shoes, but her items because she's not staying there anymore. That was the last time that she stayed at his place, period. A couple weeks passed, and they had dinner with John and his son and daughter-in-law. The situation with the son and the daughter-in-law is that they were the ones who originally had the lease on the townhome. John had moved in with them and took over the lease when they found like a home to buy. So he had about 6 months remaining on the lease at this point. After all the small talk happens, John's daughter-in-law asks, "Has anything scary or creepy happened in that townhome?" Immediately, Brittany is like, "What are you talking about?" The son and daughter-in-law proceed to tell Brittany and John their experiences in the townhome before John moved in, and it was almost exactly what Brittany had been experiencing times like 100. Daughter-in-law's last straw was she was reading in the living room And from the living room, you can see down the hallway that leads to John's room. There's a bathroom like right across the hall from it. Daughter-in-law looks up from her book, sees a shadowy figure standing pretty much outside of the doorway to the bathroom, staring right back at her. The daughter-in-law says that it was like looking at pure evil. They moved out shortly after that. John took over the lease. And then Brittany had the misfortune of meeting whatever entity was attached to this home. I'm going to put a trigger warning here for DV. After the lease had ended, John actually moved in with Brittany, and she says his mask completely came off. I'm not going to include details, but you can probably fill in the blanks on what happened. And John would often joke that whatever evil was in the townhouse followed him to Brittany's. Luckily, she was able to get out of that situation and hasn't had contact with John in years, and oftentimes has thoughts about what evil was present in the townhome and what evil was following him. Brittany includes something at the end that I've actually talked about with these scary stories before, and that is evil disguises itself as a dream come true. People can also be very charismatic and handsome and beautiful and charming. And the end paragraph of Brittany's email reminds me of the story that I told about a woman selling her soul to the devil and how it was too good to be true. Anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Something weird happened when I was around 10, 11 years old and I was staying at my dad's house. I'm sure it can be explained. I don't know if it's paranormal, but it's weird. So I was staying at my dad's house for the weekend, and my dad was into like collecting like historic things, and he had a flint, which I think is something that you could set fire with. I don't know. Anyway, I remember my little sister holding this flint while being on my dad's bed, and she would have been 2, maybe 3 years old at the time. Anyway, that evening, my dad woke us up. He was really angry because he wanted the flint and we didn't know where it was. I don't need to go into full details, and I don't want to go into full details on what happened. Basically, had to stay up all night looking for this flint that we couldn't find, and my being the oldest, I got the brunt of it. So the following morning was a Sunday, and my nan would come round and take us all to the car boot sale. She was there bright and early to get those bargains. And when she turned up, she noticed that we were all really quiet, really tired, really sad. And she asked me what was wrong. I told her, and I remember her being really angry and storming into the kitchen where my dad was. Now, my nan was tiny. She was probably 5'1", maybe 2, and my dad was 6 foot, around 6 foot, and she was telling him off. I remember her pointing her finger at him and saying, "You need to look after these girls," saying what she said. And the weirdest thing happened. So, you know, like a light fitting, like that round thing on the light fitting, that moved, and the flint fell through the ceiling and hit my dad on the head. It happened. It fell through the ceiling and hit my dad on the head. At that moment, she was telling him off. Now, my stepmom unfortunately passed away when my sisters were really little. And when that happened, my nan said, "That's the girl's mum doing that, telling you off, like telling you to look after these girls." And it was just baffling. I remember witnessing it and being like, what the hell just happened? Where did that come from? I have thought about this for years, and I'm a very logical person. I say many times that I think everything can be explained by the right person. I've always thought it maybe fell through the boards, you know, if it fell through the floorboards and at that moment hit him at the perfect right time. Also, my nan was a bit woo-woo, so it could have been that, but honestly, I don't know what happened to this day.
This lady claims that she cut the tongue off a witch that was about to take her baby. Thank you to the person who tagged me in this video. This is coming from J. Paco Arias. If you want to go listen to it in Spanish, head on over to his page. But if you don't know Spanish, let me translate the story for you. So there is a couple that lived in Mexico City, and they ended up getting pregnant. When they did have the baby, they thought it was really complicated. They couldn't pay their bills, and they were having a really hard time. So the guy ends up telling his girlfriend, "Hey, why don't we just go live with my parents in the rancho? They have a really big house. They have a lot of space and we wouldn't be bothering them, and she agreed to go and live there because again they were having a really hard time. They end up moving to the rancho, which is in Tlaxcala, with the guy's parents. When they get to the rancho, obviously his parents are so happy because now the baby's gonna be living there with them, so they were welcomed with open arms and they told them they can get any room they wanted. So everything was going well until they both noticed that on one of the trees next to the room that they were at, there was always a really big turkey on top of the tree. Turkey, like the other story where that witch got run over because she was a turkey flying really low. Now, seeing a turkey is not weird in itself. Obviously the turkey didn't belong to them, but they thought that maybe it belonged to the neighbor. The thing that they thought was weird was how did that turkey get all the way up in that really tall tree? So even though that was really strange, how did that turkey get up so high? I mean, turkeys could technically, you know, fly, but not that high. After this, a few days would go by and there was a night when they were both taking a walk. And as they were walking around the rancho, they noticed that when you looked up at the trees, there was almost like balls of fire above the trees on every one. If you don't know, in Mexico, people claim that balls of fire are witches. I'm not sure if it's true or not, but this is just things that I've heard. There's also videos that people have taken of these balls of fire, and if I have them, I'm gonna post them right here so that you guys can see what they're seeing above the trees and what other people claim to see as well in Mexico. After this, they also noticed that it wasn't just one turkey on that really high tree anymore. Now there was two turkeys all the way up there, and they thought that was so freaking weird. So by this point, you know, the guy thought, this is it, I need to scare these turkeys off because it feels like they're just there watching us. And he said that he had trouble getting those turkeys to leave. It got to a point where he started throwing rocks at the turkey in the trees and they would not move. The only way he was able to get those turkeys off of the tree is because he got a really big stick and literally had to touch the turkeys with the stick for them to finally jump out and leave them all together. So there was a night that the guy had just gotten home from work and he laid down on the bed with his wife. His wife was already laying there, the baby was in between them, and they just started talking about work and what they did that day. And then out of nowhere, they explained that they both felt like this really heavy, sleepy sensation, and they both ended up falling asleep mid-conversation with each other. They think that a few minutes pass, and that's when the girl ends up like moving a little bit, and with her hand, she tried to feel for the baby in the middle, and the baby was gone. So she's waking up the guy. She's like, Jorge, wake up, the baby, where's the baby? He gets up, they both turn the lights on, they're looking everywhere in their room, and the baby is nowhere to be found, not under the bed, nowhere. And just by instinct, he's like, let me open the door. Like, what if somebody took the baby? What if my parents took the baby too? Like, maybe it was them. And when he opens the door to their bedroom, the baby is right outside their door. Not only was the baby in front of the door, but it was still bundled up the way it was on the bed. There's no way this baby could have crawled out on its own. Like, it was bundled, it was by itself. His parents were nowhere there. So where they live is the type of rancho where everybody knows each other. There's little stores in the center of the rancho. So the next day, they, with the baby, went into town and they happened to run across this lady who was known for doing limpias, cleansings, sorry. His wife started telling this lady everything that was happening, and she ends up telling them that they have to get palma bendita and even scissors and a cross and put it all around the bedroom where the baby was. The lady ends up telling them that they had to do this because this is how you protect your baby from the witches. So they do end up doing everything this lady tells them to do, and I'm assuming that they kind of let their guard down a little bit because it started working. There was no turkeys. There was like nothing happening with their baby. There was one night where something really freaky happened. So Jorge, the baby, and his girlfriend are in bed and he is starting to doze off, but in one of those moments where he opens his eyes, he realizes that he sees some kind of rope or twiny looking thing coming down from the roof of his room. And it just so happened that his mom had walked into the room and saw the same thing that he was looking at. She immediately screams, "That's the tongue of the witch! That's the tongue of the witch!" And because they had like those scissors around the room, she ends up grabbing one of the scissors and without hesitating, she cuts that twine. And as soon as she cuts it, they explain that the rest of it that was not cut, it just zooms up the roof and disappears. The mom, obviously having dealt with shit like this before, knew exactly what was happening. So A few days later, in the rancho, like in town, they started noticing that there was a really old lady that had been walking around. They didn't recognize her. They thought that maybe she was one of the people who were like more indigenous and lived up the mountains. They had been seeing her walking around for, a few days. The reason why a lot of people noticed that this lady walking around is because she was acting really weird. And it was to the point where one of the people who had like their store there went up to her and said, "Hey, do you need any help? What are you looking for? Like, what are you doing in the town?" And she wouldn't respond to them. Other people would go up to her, "Hey, where are you from?" And she wouldn't respond. She wouldn't answer anybody's question. Turns out that somebody finally saw this lady's mouth opened and noticed that she didn't have a tongue. This lady was the fucking witch that was on the roof of their house trying to take their baby when that mom chopped up her freaking tongue. Now this guy's like, you can believe it or not believe it, but this is something that I lived through, and I definitely believe that it was the lady that was on the roof. Now the story is being told on this podcast, so there's two guys like going back and forth on the story, giving their opinions. This is the end of the story, but this guy starts talking about how he does believe that that could have been the witch and that happened because there was like another story about this girl. Something happened that she ended up having a random ass birthmark, but the girl noticed that in all her baby pictures she never had that birthmark. It was almost like at a certain age she got the birthmark and now she had it forever. And as she grew up, she started asking her parents like, why don't I have my birthmark in these pictures and blah blah blah, and that's when her parents finally told her that when she was a baby, apparently a witch tried to take her and the witch actually licked her, and in the spot that the witch had licked her, that's when that like mark appeared, and it just never went away. They were able to like get the baby before the witch took her altogether. These are things that these two men in this podcast honestly believe, and they believe just because of the experiences of other people have shared with them. And if I'm being honest, in a lot of Mexican stories, people do believe that there are certain witches that do take babies. Think hocus pocus up in that bitch. But anyway, what do you guys think?
I know how this is going to sound, okay? And if someone else had told me the story a week ago, I'd have laughed at them. But something happened to me last Tuesday and I can't stop thinking about it. I've lived in my apartment building for almost 3 years. Hidden behind the gym is a small steam room that hardly anyone seems to know about. Most evenings I have it completely to myself. It's become part of my routine after work because my job can be quite exhausting. And it's the only place where everything is completely quiet. All you can hear is the hiss of the steam and the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. It's bliss, like a big, warm hug. Last Tuesday, I'd had a particularly long shift. I was completely wiped out. I went into the steam room like I always do, lay down on the top bench, rested my head against the wall and thought 10 minutes, then I'll head upstairs. But I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, something immediately felt wrong. The steam was much thicker than usual. I could barely see the opposite side of the room. I looked at my watch to see how long I'd been asleep, but the screen had gone black. Then I realised I wasn't alone. Someone was sitting on the bench opposite me. At first, I just assumed another resident had come in while I was asleep. "Hello?" I said. Nothing. I rubbed my eyes, expecting the steam to clear a little, but instead it seemed to move around the person sitting opposite me. I could make out shoulders, arms, long hair, but no face. I stood up. "Who's there?" Nothing. And then it smiled. I don't know how I knew it smiled when I couldn't properly see its face, but somehow I knew that it had smiled. At exactly the same time, I heard someone giggle underneath the bench.
Oh, vile.
I looked down. There was nothing except steam rolling across the floor, and then something touched my foot. Ice cold fingers. They slowly ran across the sole of my foot before wiggling against my toes. I pulled my feet onto the bench and backed away until I was against the wall. The figure opposite me stood up. The steam clung to her body, giving her shape. She was only a few feet away now. I finally saw her face. And the creepiest part? I recognised it. There's something I haven't been completely honest about. Earlier, I said that my job is stressful, and that's true. But it's not the job that I have now that matters. A few years ago, I worked in a hospital mortuary. Most people imagine it's just moving bodies around, but there was paperwork, identification, preparing people for their families, all kinds of things. One winter night, I'd been working for over 30 hours with almost no sleep. A young woman was brought down after being pronounced dead. I checked the paperwork, but I never checked her myself. She wasn't dead. Not at first, anyway. The investigation was kept quiet, the hospital settled everything internally, lawyers got involved, and I left before anyone outside the staff knew what had happened. I've spent years telling myself that it wasn't entirely my fault, that someone else had pronounced her dead. I was just following procedure. The figure took another step towards me and my legs gave way. I'm sorry. It was all I could think to say. She didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. Worse. So much worse. Then the giggling started again. This time I realised something that made my stomach turn. The woman in front of me wasn't laughing. The laughter was coming from underneath the bench. I looked down again. A second face slowly emerged through the steam beneath me. But it was her, the same woman. How could that be? Curled beneath the bench with her chin resting on her folded arms, looking up at me as though this was the funniest thing she'd ever seen. Her freezing fingers wrapped gently around my ankle before tickling the bottom of my foot again. Every time I tried to pull away, she laughed harder. Then, oh God, I'm typing this up now in my apartment and I can hear her. I've just heard it again, the giggling. I think this time it's coming from her bedroom. She's never going to leave me alone. You know what? I might as well tell you the truth. Maybe that's what she wants. Maybe if I tell the truth, she'll leave me alone. I lied. I knew she was alive. I realised the mistakes of the paramedics and the doctors immediately. As soon as she was placed into my care, the colour was already returning to her cheeks. I heard her trying to breathe. I saw her fingers move. She even opened her eyes and whispered, "Help," to me. I looked at her, stroked her face, and she looked relieved, until I pressed down hard on a mouse. I'd always wondered what it would be like to kill someone, and she was the first. Not the last. Oh, good. The giggling stopped. I can finally get on with the story. I'm thinking of turning it into a book. What do you think? It's a fun inside joke if I write a fictional thriller based on the murders I've actually committed. Then, my laptop's just chimed. Underneath the words I've been writing. A comment. This is my first draft. No one's seen it. How could anyone comment on it? It read, "Great first draft. The steam room scenes are strong. The confession's a little on the nose, though." And then another line's appeared. "You forgot the part where you check under your bed." I froze. I could hear a soft giggle coming from the bedroom. I'm closing the laptop. The giggling stopped again. Silence, though. Oh my God, the laptop lid is opening by itself. One final comment appeared. Chapter 2 starts when you look behind you. I haven't looked yet, and if the story ends here, it's because I finally did.
Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that they will never ever mess with a Jamaican woman because of what happened to their cousin. I am back with another spooky story. Buckle up. So her cousin, we're gonna call the cousin Shanice. So Shanice was really excited when she started messing with this big baller. Now she used to open up to her cousin, the one who submitted the story, about this man that she met. He would spend lots of money on her, he would take care of her, but it was just one detail about that man. He was in a relationship. He had been with the same woman for about 9 years, but they weren't married. Now, the cousin said that she warned Shanice about messing with men in relationships. Even she couldn't see any of this coming. Now, the man would travel back and forth between the States and Jamaica, so I guess she was his US girlfriend. As the relationship progressed, Shanice wanted more and more from the man. One day, she was so impatient that she unlocked that man's phone, found her WhatsApp information, and called the girl back home while he was sleeping. She told her everything. She told her that that man is hers. The boy is mine. I'm sorry that you seem to be confused. The boy is mine. Well, the girlfriend in Jamaica didn't take too kindly to that. They started arguing on the phone, to which Shanice told the girl that, well, if she satisfied all his needs, he wouldn't feel the need to sleep with her in the States. Now, mind you, the girlfriend back home actually didn't know about Shanice. Shanice only knew about her. The man woke up, Shanice and the man fell out, but eventually, about a week later, got back together. But things with the girlfriend back home was getting real tumultuous. And from Shanice's perspective, that relationship is basically coming to an end. Just short of 3 weeks after everything happened, Shanice fell really sick. When she went to the doctors thought she was pregnant. They ran a pregnancy test on her. It came back positive. Shanice went home and was having a lot of complications. She went back to the hospital just to find out that she was never pregnant. But she's ill and facing all these complications. And she looks visibly sick. At this point, doctors are running all types of tests on her. Y'all, doctors cannot find anything. Every test came back normal, but Shanice was just getting weaker. Shanice started opening up to her cousin about these nightmares that she was having at the time. She was dreaming of a woman that she didn't recognize standing in front of her front door, whispering her name, trying to lure her out of her own house. And the closer she gets to that door, the weaker she becomes. At some point, Shanice stopped sleeping altogether. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt like somebody or something was messing with her bed. Shanice stopped sleeping altogether. She would go over to that cousin's house and claim that she was being watched. And every time she would point to the direction in which these people were watching her, she wouldn't see anything. There was nobody there, but Shanice was seeing a set of people. Shanice went back home, and a couple days after that, she basically ran out of her apartment. She disappeared for a few days and was found almost 20 miles away from home, unclothed, naked and afraid. She seemed to be in very deep psychosis. That man, do you think he stuck with her through all of it? He actually left right after he found out that it was a false pregnancy. Until this day, her cousin Shanice is in and out of mental hospitals. Sometimes she's stable, and sometimes she claims that she's still seeing those people. Shanice, her beautiful cousin, who was perfectly healthy, is now low-key wasting away. But recently, her family has opened up to seeing a voodoo priest. They weren't open to it before because they're Christian, but clearly Shanice is still going through it. They said that maybe seeing a voodoo priest might help her. The cousin said that she will update me. But that is the end of that story. I don't have any final thoughts. Actually, let me know in the comments. Do y'all think she deserved all that? Let me know in the comments from your favorite Haitian homegirl.
My sleep app recorded a man asking me questions in my sleep, and every answer came from my voice. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about the reason why I stopped sleeping alone. A few months ago, I downloaded one of those apps that records noises while you sleep. I had been waking up exhausted, even on nights when I thought I slept for 8 or 9 hours. I also kept waking up with headaches, so I wondered if I was snoring. The app only recorded when it detected sound. Most mornings, there were 5 or 6 clips, me coughing or my sheets moving or even a car outside, but nothing interesting. And then one morning, there was a recording labeled 3:11 a.m. The clip started with me breathing, and then about 10 minutes in, a man whispered, "Are you awake?" There was a pause, and then I answered, "No." My voice sounded strange, slow and flat, like I was talking in my sleep, and the man whispered again, "Can you see me?" I said, "No." The recording ended, and I listened to it at least 20 times. I lived alone in a second-floor apartment, and the walls were thin, so my first thought was that the man's voice had come from next door. Maybe my neighbor had his television on, or even maybe the app picked up a podcast through the wall. The problem was how clearly my voice responded. The timing was perfect, and he asked a question. I answered. Still, people talk in their sleep, so it could have been a coincidence. That was what I decided, at least. I almost deleted the app, but part of me wanted to see if it happened again. The next night, I left my phone on the nightstand in the same place. In the morning, there was another recording. This one was from 2:46 a.m. The man said, "Do you live alone?" My sleeping voice said, "Yes." And he asked, "Does anyone have a key?" I said, "My sister." And then the clip ended. I called my sister immediately. She was the only person with a spare key, but she lived almost an hour away, and she hadn't been to my apartment in weeks. I sent her the recording, and she called me back and told me to contact the police. I didn't. I knew what they would say. A recording of a voice wasn't proof that someone had been inside. I checked every window and door, and nothing was damaged. Nothing appeared to be missing. I searched the entire apartment, including my bed and inside the hall closet. There was nowhere for someone to hide. That afternoon, I asked the man who lived next door if he had been watching television around 3 a.m, and he said he had been working an overnight shift. The apartment on the other side of mine was empty, and its tenants had moved out the week before. That night, I didn't use the app. I locked the bedroom door and put a chair beneath the handle, and I barely slept. The following night, I convinced myself I was being ridiculous. There had to have been an explanation, and I thought the easiest way to find it was to collect more recordings. This time, I placed my phone on the dresser across the room. I also opened the camera and recorded video before I went to sleep. When I woke up, the video had stopped after about 40 minutes because my storage was full. The sleep app had recorded 3 clips, and the first 2 were normal, and the third was recorded at 3:11 a.m. again. The man sounded farther away this time. He asked, "Which room is yours?" My sleeping voice answered, "The one at the end of the hall." He said, "Is the door locked?" And there was a long pause, and then I answered, "Not anymore." I sat there staring at my bedroom door. The chair was no longer beneath the handle, and it was up against the wall. The door was still closed, but the lock had been turned. I checked the video, and for the first 40 minutes, I didn't move. The chair stayed beneath the handle, so whatever happened had to have happened later. I packed a bag and stayed with my sister for 3 nights. I slept normally at her house. There was no talking or headaches or recordings. My sister wanted me to move out immediately, but I had 7 months left on my lease. I couldn't afford to pay rent somewhere else, and I still didn't have proof that anyone had entered my apartment. I bought a security camera instead. I placed it on the bookshelf facing my bedroom door, and it sent motion alerts directly to my phone. The first night back, nothing happened. The second night, the app recorded a woman laughing somewhere outside. The third night, there was another conversation. The man whispered, "Where do you keep the spare key?" My sleeping voice said, "Under the blue flower pot." And that was true. I had forgotten it was there. I had hidden outside my apartment months earlier after locking myself out. The man asked, "Will anyone come tonight?" And I said no. And then he said, "Good." I got out of bed and checked the security camera. There had been no motion alerts, and the camera showed my bedroom door closed all night. I went outside and checked the flower pot, and the spare key was gone. I called the police after that. 2 officers searched the apartment and checked the lock. They said there were no signs of forced entry, and one of them suggested I had moved the key and forgotten. I played the recordings for them, and they listened, but I could tell they didn't know what to do with them. They told me to change my locks and contact the property manager. The manager replaced the lock the next afternoon. I stayed home while he did it, and he gave me 2 new keys. I kept both of them with me. That night, I put the chair beneath my bedroom door again. I placed my phone on the dresser and the security camera was running. I also kept a small lamp on because I didn't want to wake up in complete darkness. At 3:11 a.m., my phone recorded one final clip. It started with the bedroom door creaking, and then the man whispered, "Can she hear me now?" My voice answered, "Yes." The man said, "Is she awake?" I answered, "Almost." And then I heard breathing directly beside the phone. My own breathing was still audible from the bed, and there were 2 people breathing in the room. The man whispered, "Open your eyes." The recording ended, and I woke up at that exact moment. The lamp was off and the chair had been moved. My bedroom door was open. There was someone standing beside the dresser, and I couldn't see his face. I only saw the outline of a man leaning over my phone. And then the security camera sent a motion alert. The sound made him turn toward me, and I ran. I went through the bathroom and climbed out the window onto the roof below. I stayed there screaming until my downstairs neighbors called the police, and they searched the apartment again. No one was inside, and the front door was locked. The security camera had recorded the entire night, and it showed my bedroom door opening at 3:11 a.m. It showed the chair sliding away from it, but no one was touching either one. I moved out the next morning. I deleted the sleep app and got a new phone. I still don't know who was asking me those questions. I just know he found out everything he needed by listening to me sleep. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
Let's read a scary Reddit story. I am currently job searching, which means I have had a lot of time to spend on Reddit, and I want to share some of the scariest stories I've come across. This week's theme is Louisiana, because that's my home state and Louisiana is haunted as fuck. This is a pretty long story, so get comfy and get ready. My husband and I are from North Carolina, but my mother recently remarried and moved to Hammond, Louisiana. I am pregnant and I desperately needed to take a vacation to see my mom because we both really miss each other and she can't be with me all the time now. Kind of sucky, but it was a great excuse to go see my mom and her new husband and go to a Mardi Gras parade in New Orleans, since it wasn't that far away. That was really for my husband's benefit, but I was really excited to go too because we needed to have a little fun since he has been working overtime ever since we found out about the pregnancy. We thought it would be great to get a hotel for a night and relax and watch the fun from the balcony of our room. We ended up going and having a pretty cool time. I can't walk or stand up constantly without resting or having to pee. This baby likes to use my bladder as a bouncy cushion, so that kind of dampened the experience, but New Orleans is like super cool, scary and wild, but in a fun way. We slept in the next morning after the parade and ate breakfast before making the drive back to my mom's house. It's not a very far drive. It took us about an hour or a little more to get to New Orleans the day before. But I guess I had too much water and orange juice to drink with breakfast, and I knew I wasn't going to make it back to my mom's house without needing to do my business. Traffic was awful trying to get out of New Orleans, and we got lost once trying to figure out how to get back on the interstate. So needless to say, I had to go, badly. We saw an exit sign for a town called Ruddock, so my husband took the exit with the hopes it had a restroom or a gas station. From what we could see, which was nothing, there was no gas station or restaurant or anything. So we kept driving down this little road just in case, but we ended up at the edge of the water. It looked like a boat launch where the road disappeared into the swamp water. My husband said we could turn back and find another restroom, but there was no point. I was going to piss all over myself before we found another exit. I asked him to guard me so I could squat and do my business, just in case someone else decided to drive down and launch their boat. As I'm squatting and trying not to pee on my shoes on the other side of the truck, I hear my husband give a strange laugh. He jogged around the truck and gave me a smile, like he thought something weird was happening. "We've got company," he said, and looked back around the truck. He seemed perplexed but amused. And of course, I tried to finish as fast as possible and wipe with some fast food napkins while he waved his hands to rush me along. I figured whoever it was actually coming to greet us, and I didn't want to be caught with my pants down, literally. I tidied up and followed him around the truck and was kind of relieved to see it was a little old lady walking towards us slowly and awkwardly as little old ladies do. "Where did she come from?" I asked my husband. He shrugged and gave me a sideways look that said, "It beats me." But when she waved at us, we both waved back like it was the most normal thing in the world. We didn't feel threatened in any way. My husband muttered, yeah, lady, we see you." And I hit him in the arm so he'd shut up. She looked just like any regular old lady. She was African American and had thin white hair and wore a big sack-like dress. It kind of broke my heart to see, suddenly, that she wasn't wearing any shoes. She waddled closer, and I realized how rude we were being and pulled my husband out to meet her. I later figured out that we both assumed she had Alzheimer's and had somehow wandered away from her family. But it also occurred to me how very odd that was, seeing as we were miles from civilization in the heart of the swamplands. And I couldn't see how this lady could just wander down the interstate without someone noticing. It was very clear to us that there was no town of Ruddock. Nothing. Just a railroad track that runs parallel to the interstate and a boat launch. It was kind of unsettling. No houses or signs of life anywhere. When we got close up to her, we knew with swift embarrassment that she stunk. It made me recoil, and my husband told me later that he hadn't ever smelled anything quite like it. There was something acidic to it, like bile and sweat. I knew we had to help this lady somehow because she obviously had been wandering for a while without shoes, possibly for days. "Hello, miss. It's kind of chilly out here. Are you all right?" my husband asked, as kindly as he could. We were both having trouble trying to stay upwind from her smell. She smiled at us and showed us a few yellowed teeth. I had a creepy feeling about her suddenly. She told us her name was Aunt Julia and kept rocking back and forth on her feet. My husband kept talking to her and asking her if she needed any help, but all I could do was stare at her because something was very off. Still to this day, I can't describe what was truly wrong with her, but it was not Alzheimer's. She held up a hand to my husband's face and interrupted him mid-sentence. He was trying to tell her that he was going to call someone for help, probably some nice police officers. Then, Aunt Julia beckoned us to follow her. Instantly, we were both on high alert. My husband told me to keep calm and stay with the truck so he could figure out what was going on, but I held onto his hand because I didn't want him to go with her. "Let's just call the police and wait here," I begged him. "She's just a little old lady. She's wandering away to the water. Look, let me go bring her back if I can, and then we will call someone," he assured me. He followed her out to the edge of the road where the water met it. I did too. The little old lady pointed at something off in the distance in the water. My husband and I both squinted really hard, but all we could see was something bobbing in the distance. "I took him with me," she said. Her voice was stronger and way more menacing than I possibly could have imagined. "Took who?" "Ma'am, please come back with us to the truck. We want to make sure you get home safe." My husband tried to continue and reason with her. "I took him with me, just like I said I would." She nodded. I couldn't take my eyes off her. She looked so angry. It was extremely unsettling, and I watched her rock back and forth on her feet in a restless way. "Oh my God," my husband said. "Oh shit. Go back to the truck, Kay. What? What's going on? Call 911. That's a fucking dead body. It's a floater, he shouted, pointing at the thing in the water. Aunt Julia started cackling, just like somebody you would hear in an insane asylum, and we both froze. Me watching her, and him watching the body floating in the swamp. It was a very angry laughter that pricked the hair on my skin. I realized she was out of her mind, but not in the same way some old ladies are. I took him with me, she laughed, and several more bodies bobbed up out of the water like submerged corks. I felt my stomach roll, and my husband and I retreated from her. I waddled, pregnant, to the truck and grabbed his phone and dialed 911. I tried to keep my voice steady as I explained that we had found an old lady wandering around by herself off the Ruddock exit, and there were a couple of bodies floating in the swamp water. I stayed on the line with the operator for a few more minutes, describing several of the bodies. Women, men, and possibly children. I remember breaking down on the line with the emergency operator because of the smaller bodies I'd seen. It's very hard to describe how horrified and upset I was. I also described the old lady and that she seemed to be claiming responsibility for it. As I was relaying our location again and our names, my husband kept a close eye on this creepy, laughing old lady. She never did stop laughing and repeating herself about how she took them with her, even when the first police car showed up. I know the officer saw the bodies. He even managed to smooth talk Aunt Julia into sliding into the backseat of his cruiser. We chatted with the officer for a little bit and he assured us that everything would be taken care of and took both of our statements. Soon, another cop showed up and the first one went to check on the old lady. Aunt Julia was gone. My husband and I both looked for her in the back of the cruiser and tried helping the officer search for this old lady, but it was getting dark and I felt my feet getting too tired. Then, the first officer noticed that the floaters he had seen in the water were gone too. Just vanished. Nothing. Not a shred of clothing or a stretch of skin. We are about to ask if we could go home soon. I was more than a little shaken, expecting this crazy Aunt Julia to jump out at me from somewhere, when the second officer called my husband over. "What did you say her name was again?" he asked. "She told me her name was Julia," my husband shrugged. No. She introduced herself as Aunt, right?" the officer asked. "If you folks are trying to pull my leg, I'm going to have to accuse you of filing a false police report," he said, pretty sternly. It kind of scared me. The first officer to arrive called him over, and we heard him assure the second officer that yes, he had helped an old lady into the back of his cruiser earlier, and no, nobody was in on any prank. They both decided that we could go, but asked us to keep our phones near us since they were going to have to do a search in the swamp at some point and might need immediate contact. So we left, after the police checked our trunk bed just in case crazy Aunt Julia was hiding in it. My husband and I really don't know what happened after that, or if they ever found anything in the water. I don't know if they ever found that old lady either. But what the second officer said about a prank really didn't sit well with me. So when we got back to my mom's house, I peed again and did a little bit of research. I came across the history of Ruddock, and it's kind of freaky and sad. It got washed away in a hurricane, and a lot of people died almost 100 years ago. We have come to a tentative conclusion that what we witnessed wasn't entirely rationally explanatory. As in, did we stumble upon some sort of ghost shit? I haven't read anything newsworthy about Ruddock or about a bunch of bodies found floating in the swamp. So I'm guessing nothing much happened after we left. I don't even know Aunt Julie's last name to see if she comes up in some obituary or nursing home escape account. Nothing. Nobody ever called us back, and we were never asked to go to a police station. I'm leaning towards ghost shit. It's just a feeling I get. It's been around a month since it happened, and we still end up talking about it and trying to piece together what might have been going on and what might have happened after the officers let us leave. This just proves how haunted Louisiana is. So if you guys want to hear more haunted Louisiana stories or any other scary stories from Reddit, please let me know. Bye.
This is why you should never leave the dead unattended. Welcome back to the series where I tell true horror experiences submitted by you, the viewers. Today's viewer is going to remain anonymous, but a big thank you for submitting your experience. This one is ridiculously creepy, and I made the mistake of reading this last night, which in hindsight was probably not the best of ideas. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Today's true horror experience takes place in Asia, where we're going back to the Philippines. During my grandmother's wake, only a few people came to visit because of the heavy rain outside. The house itself was unusually quiet. The only sounds you could hear was the pattering against the roof, the ticking of the wall clock, and the flickering of the candles that surrounded her coffin. That night, I felt like it was my turn to watch her while everyone else slept. My mother had barely slept for days now. She was too busy greeting everyone and organising everything, so I told her to finally get some sleep. Just as she was about to disappear into her room, she suddenly stopped in the doorway and sternly looked me in the eyes. "Promise me you won't leave Grandma unattended," she said. "I won't," I replied, quite perplexed. "And don't fall asleep." I laughed nervously. "Can you explain why, Mum?" "Well, there's this old Filipino superstition that serves as a warning to not leave the dead alone. We honestly don't know why the elders believed it." Trying to act cool, I responded, "Don't worry too much. I can handle it." "Just stay awake," she repeated one last time before disappearing into her room for the night. I sat beside my grandmother's coffin, reading a couple comic books to help pass the time. At one point, I stood up and looked at her. She had a rosary wrapped neatly in her hands, and her face looked peaceful. Midnight soon arrived, and then 12:30, and I tried everything to remain awake, scrolling on my phone, pacing back and forth. I even made myself a coffee and splashed my face with cold water, and it worked. For a while, at least. Some time passed, and I felt my eyelids start to droop. I glanced towards my watch. 1:03 a.m. I'll just close my eyes for a moment, I thought to myself. The next thing I knew, I was suddenly jolted awake. I had fallen asleep. The thing is, though, I had no idea what had startled me. The room itself was completely silent. Even the rain outside seemed quieter than before. But that's when I noticed that there was something wrong. The rosary, which had been neatly placed within my grandmother's hands, was now lying on the floor besides the coffin. I stared at it for a while in complete and utter confusion. I was so sure no one else had entered the room. But it was just then that my eyes slowly gazed towards the coffin itself. And my heart completely stopped. The lid of the coffin, which had been left open all evening, may I add, so that family members could drop on by and pay their respects, was now completely closed. For a moment, I was stuck in some kind of trance, and I couldn't breathe. I tried to convince myself that perhaps someone had come in while I was sleeping and closed it. But there were no sounds of footsteps, doors closing, or voices. Everyone was asleep. I didn't think. I just immediately sprinted down the hallway towards my mother's room. "Mum," I shouted, banging on her door like a madman. "Please wake up." She swung the door open. What happened? I fell asleep. I struggled to control my breathing, but explained the situation to the best of my ability. By this point, the rest of my family had all woken up, rushing out their rooms, wondering what the commotion was all about. Entering the room, she saw the rosary on the floor and the closed coffin lid, and her face went completely pale. But yet she remained completely calm. She picked it up from the floor, gently placed it back between my grandmother's fingers, and whispered, "Let's pray for her." We all gathered round and prayed in total silence, as the rain continued outside, louder. When we finished, my mother turned to me and softly said, "It's okay. Go get some sleep." I didn't sleep until sunrise. To this day, I still wonder who closed the coffin and how the rosary ended up on the floor. But one thing's for sure. Whatever happened while I was asleep, I'm I'm glad I didn't wake up in time to see it.
It's your time to scroll if you don't like paranormal or scary stories. I have another scary story submission that was sent in via email. This one is from Detour Village, Michigan. What's crazy is I was born in Michigan, raised, and I live in Michigan. I've never heard of this town, but let's get to reading the email. The email reads, "Hi Casey, you can share this story, but please keep my name anonymous. You can call me M. I've been seeing all of the stories people are sending you about the Great Lakes and the weird paranormal or extraterrestrial stuff around them. And there's something that happened to my family that I wanted to share with you. This was outside of Detour Village, Michigan. If you don't know where that is, way up in the eastern UP, right on the water. My dad used to take my brother and I night fishing. One night when I was 16, the three of us were out pretty late. No other boats were around us, no houses nearby, just completely black water. At some point, my dad shut the motor off because he thought he heard someone yelling. We sat there listening. We heard it again. Somebody was screaming for help. It sounded like a man, but it was coming from farther out on the lake. My dad immediately started the boat and headed toward it. We probably went a half a mile before we heard the screaming again, except now it was behind us. My dad stopped. A few seconds later, it came from our left. Help me! Then right from our right. Please! My dad told us both to get down in the boat. That scared me more than the screaming because my dad was not a paranoid person. He had been on the water his entire life. Then something hit the bottom of our boat. Hard. My brother immediately started crying. My dad started the motor, but before he could move, we heard someone right beside the boat say my brother's name. Not yell it, say it. My dad looked over the side. I will never forget his face when he looked back at us. He didn't say what he saw. He just slammed the throttle down and told us to not look at the water. Obviously, I looked. There was something keeping pace with the boat underneath us. The water was black, but I could see this huge pale shape moving just below the surface. Too big to be a person, and it wasn't moving like an animal. It was staying directly underneath my brother's side of the boat. Then I heard my dad's voice behind me say, "Don't turn around." But my dad was sitting in front of me, driving the boat. I remember staring at the back of his head and realizing whatever had just spoken was sitting somewhere behind me. I never turned around. Neither did my brother. We made it back to shore and my dad practically dragged us out of the boat. For years, he refused to tell us what he saw when he looked over the side. He finally told me when I was in my 30s. He said there was a face just under the water looking up at him, and it looked like my brother. My dad died a few years ago. While we were cleaning out his garage, my brother found an old tackle box from that night. Written inside the lid in my dad's handwriting were 6 words. It knew their names before I did. Neither of us knows what that means. I think that might be the part that scares me the most. So with everybody talking about the strange things around the Great Lakes lately, I genuinely want to ask you and your audience, has anyone else ever heard somebody calling to them from the water in a voice that they recognized? Because whatever was underneath our boat that night wasn't asking us to rescue it. I think it was trying to get one of us to answer. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story and trusting me to share it with everybody on my page. I definitely think you're dealing with a mimic. If you don't know what a mimic is, go back and watch some of my videos. I dealt with mimics very frequently in my parents' house. Essentially, there are certain spirits that have the ability to make themselves sound just like somebody you know and love. And it's a way to try to trick and confuse you into communicating with them. As far as the Great Lakes go, I don't know the correlation between a mimic and the water, but it does seem from so many submissions I've been getting here from Michigan that the water has some deep secrets that we just don't know. If any of you who are watching have had a similar experience, go ahead and comment below. If you want to share your scary story with me, go ahead and send it to the email above. Also, I know it's so awkward. I'm so dolled up today. I'm never like this on this page. But I've been trying to post once a day and I didn't have time to take all of this off and change and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure I got a story posted today. As always, thank you for watching. Love you. Bye.
A healthy tree should not be warm inside. I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, but I spent almost 12 years working as a consulting arborist, and I've examined thousands of trees in every condition imaginable. None of them felt alive after they were opened. The trees I inspected that day did. Tonight's spooky story is yet another reason to think twice before wandering too far into the woods. So grab a blanket, maybe a snack, and get settled in for tonight's Midnight Confessions Stories from the Dark. Several years ago, I was hired by a small timber company to inspect a section of privately owned forest before they began clearing it. The company was not planning to remove everything. They wanted to thin out several acres of older trees and leave the healthiest parts of the forest intact. Before any work could begin, however, 3 large trees had fallen within the same week. There had been no storms, heavy winds, or flooding. According to the property manager, all 3 trees had appeared healthy before they came down. The company was worried about disease spreading beneath the soil, so they asked me to determine whether the surrounding trees were safe. I arrived shortly after 8 in the morning and met a forestry technician named Caleb near the entrance to the property. He wore a faded green work jacket and muddy boots. He told me the first tree was less than half a mile from the access road. The morning was cool and overcast, but the forest felt strangely humid and quiet. There were no birds calling overhead, and I did not hear any squirrels moving through the leaves. Even the insects seemed unusually quiet. We followed a narrow trail until we reached the first fallen tree. It was an enormous oak, probably more than 70 years old. The trunk had snapped several feet above the ground and had fallen across a shallow ravine. From the outside, the tree looked healthy. The bark was firm, branches were covered in green leaves, and there were no visible fungal growths or signs of insect damage. But the inside was completely hollow. There were no signs of decay or rot. It looked as if the inside was simply scooped out. The break in the trunk revealed a dark cavity extending upward through the center of the tree. I had never seen a tree that large maintain a full canopy with so little interior structure. Caleb crouched beside the opening and shined his flashlight inside. The cavity was smooth in some areas, but farther in, the wood was covered with long scratches. They began near the broken edge and continued upward into the darkness. I assumed an animal had been living inside it, although the marks were too narrow for a bear and too deep for most smaller animals. I put on a pair of gloves and reached through the opening to examine the wood. The inside of the trunk was warm, not warmed by sunlight. The morning was cloudy, and the outer bark felt cool. The air coming from inside the cavity felt almost body temperature. When I pulled my hand back, the glove was damp. The moisture had a faint, sour smell beneath the earthiness, like wet fur or breath trapped inside a closed room. Caleb asked whether it could be fermentation caused by decaying wood. I told him it was possible, but I did not believe it. Before I could explain why, 3 slow knocks came from somewhere behind us. We both turned. The sound had come from a standing tree about 30 feet away. Caleb stared in that direction for a moment, and then suggested maybe it was a woodpecker. I was about to agree when another tree farther into the forest answered. 3 knocks, with the same rhythm and same force. The sound was too deep for a bird. It seemed to come from inside the trunk rather than from the bark. I marked the fallen oak on my map and moved on to the second tree. This one was a maple, smaller than the first, but still mature. It had fallen directly across the trail, forcing us to climb over the trunk. The roots had pulled free from the ground when it came down, leaving a wide pit filled with black soil and exposed roots. Again, the exterior looked healthy, but inside was hollow. The cavity did not stop where the trunk met the roots. It continued downward into the earth. Caleb lowered his flashlight through the broken base, but the beam disappeared beneath the root system. I knelt beside him and listened. Initially, I heard only the faint drip of moisture. Then, something scraped below us. The sound moved slowly through the hollow beneath the roots, dragging across the wood. Caleb stood so quickly that his flashlight slipped from his hand and fell into the cavity. We watched the beam tumble downward, illuminating flashes of damp wood before it landed several feet below us. For a moment, it remained still. Then, the light moved. It slid sideways into the darkness and disappeared. Caleb took a second flashlight from his backpack and aimed it into the opening. We discovered that the first light was gone. We continued deeper into the property. Every few minutes, I tested another tree with a sounding mallet. Healthy wood produces a firm, sharp response. Hollow sections create a deeper, emptier tone. The first tree I tested was solid. The second sounded hollow near the base. The third was hollow from the ground to at least 6 feet high. By the 7th tree, nearly every trunk we checked contained a cavity. Some had no visible openings at all. As we moved, the knocking began again. 3 knocks behind us, 3 from our left, 3 farther ahead. The pattern traveled through the forest in a slow circle. We decided to return to the truck and recommend that the company just suspend all work until a larger team could come and inspect the site. We had walked only a few hundred feet when a cracking sound echoed overhead. I looked up and saw one of the trees beside the trail leaning toward us. The tree fell across the trail with enough force to shake the ground. The fallen tree had split open near its base. Inside, the cavity was covered with fresh scratches. Thin strips of pale wood still curled away from the marks, and clear sap ran along the edges. A deep knock came from inside the fallen trunk. Then another answered directly beneath our feet. We backed away. The ground beneath the roots seemed to shift slightly, as though something large was moving through the soil. Caleb said we needed to leave the trail and cut around the fallen tree. We moved into the woods, keeping the access road to our right so we would not lose our direction. The knocking followed. Each time it sounded, it came from a tree closer than before. At one point, a section of bark flexed outward beside me. It bulged once, slowly, as if something inside had pressed a hand or a shoulder against it. We began moving faster. Low branches caught on my jacket, and exposed roots made it difficult to maintain a straight path. Caleb stayed several feet ahead of me until another tree cracked between us. The trunk split and leaned against a neighboring tree, blocking my view of him. I heard Caleb shout my name from somewhere ahead. Then he called, "The truck is this way. I found the road." I climbed over a cluster of roots and followed his voice. The woods had become noticeably darker, even though it was still late morning. The clouds above had thickened, and the trees stood so close together that very little light reached the ground. I heard Caleb call again, "The truck is this way." His voice came from farther ahead and slightly to my left. I pushed through the patch of young saplings, expecting to see his green jacket between the trees. Instead, I found another fallen trunk. This one had split lengthwise, leaving a narrow opening along its side. The hollow inside was dark enough that I couldn't see the end. From somewhere within it, Caleb's voice said, "I found the road." I stopped moving. The voice had not come from beyond the tree. It had come from inside it. I started running. I kept running until I broke through the tree line and stumbled into the access road. The truck was parked about 50 feet away, and Caleb stood beside it. When he saw me, he ran toward me and asked where I had been. I told him that I was following him. He looked confused. He said he had never been ahead of me. When the tree split between us, he had been knocked backward and fallen down the slope. By the time he climbed back up, I was gone. He had spent several minutes calling my name while following the access road toward the truck. I asked whether he had shouted, "The truck is this way. I found the road." He said no. We drove out of the property and contacted the timber company from a gas station several miles away. The company temporarily suspended work in that section of the forest. They sent a larger inspection crew 2 days later, but the crew refused to continue after finding several more trees that had fallen. No one could explain the hollow trunks or the tunnels beneath the roots. About a week later, I began organizing the photographs I had taken during the inspection. One image had been taken at the first oak. I remembered crouching beside the broken trunk and photographing the scratches inside the cavity. At first glance, nothing about the picture seemed unusual. Then, I enlarged it. Near the far edge of the flashlight beam, someone was crawling away from the camera. The person wore a faded green jacket. It was Caleb. His back faced me, and he was moving deeper into the hollow on his hands and knees. I sent him the photograph and called him immediately. He sounded shocked. He told me he had never entered the tree. I have inspected hundreds of trees since that day and have never come across anything that could explain what we experienced. It sounds to me like something was living in those trees and maybe using some sort of tunneling system to navigate through the forest. Now, what exactly was doing this? I don't know. Let me know your theory in the comments. And as always, thanks for spending the night with me. If you love spooky stories, be sure to follow for more Midnight Confessions.
We are on a roll with these cryptid stories, you guys. So I came across this story that someone posted about, and they said it was actually what happened to their sister when she was living in Kansas. For this story, we're going to call this person Jess. He can't remember the name of the town, but he said it must have been near a military base, since the reason she was living there was because she was with her now ex-husband, who was in the military. So Years ago, Jess was in a park, and this particular park was a one-way in, one-way out situation. And Jess was there at night, of course. Now, during this time, she would often go to this park because she was in an abusive marriage. So she would kind of go here as an escape. And that one-way in, one-way out situation was actually a covered bridge. So she would go here many times before, and previously she never had any issue until tonight. So there is a really big grassy area in the middle where she was laying on her blanket, and then off to the side there was a heavily wooded area. The parking lot was also a little ways out in front of her. So she's laying there on the blanket, she's listening to music, and she has a little candle lit. And as she's just laying on her back, relaxing, all of a sudden she hears right up inside her ear a voice say, "Get up now." So she sits up immediately, and all the hairs on her body stand on end, and she starts looking around. So initially she didn't really see anything, and there weren't really other cars nearby. So she's scanning left and right, and she's not seeing anything yet. And then she scans over to the left one more time, and that's when she sees something. She sees some movement at the tree line, and right away her brain goes to, oh, it must be a deer. And then she looks closer and she notices it's humanoid in shape. So she's thinking to herself, well, maybe it's just a person walking their dog. But she couldn't really shake that uneasy feeling. So she starts to cautiously and slowly gather up her things. She blows out the candle, she's packing it up, she picks up the blanket, and she decides she's gonna leave. Okay, so Jess looks away just for a second, just to kind of pack up her things. And when she looked back up, she noticed that whatever this thing was had come leaps and bounds closer to her. Like, it got way closer to her than it should have been able to in those few seconds. And then she realized just how tall this thing was. And then alarm bells started going off in her mind. She could hear the sound of the grass crunching beneath its feet as it took steps closer to her, as she quickly sat up and grabbed the rest of her things and started heading swiftly to the car. So where this creature was positioned in her sort of direction to that exit to the car, she actually had to kind of head towards it in like a diagonal direction. I cannot even freaking imagine. She also was walking as swiftly as she could, but she wanted to make sure she didn't break out into a full sprint because she was afraid that it would trigger that chase instinct in whatever this thing was. So she gets to the car and she gets in and she looks, and this creature is now pursuing her, but it got just about to the edge of the parking lot as she got in and closed the door, thank goodness. So again, she kind of looks away for a minute and she's getting ready to back out, and then she looks up out her front window, and in the headlights, this thing is standing right in front of her car. It towered so far above the vehicle that she couldn't even see its face, just its body. She describes this thing as being tall, gangly, skinny, and pale. She also noticed that it was completely hairless. And after that, she just kind of puts the car into reverse, slams on her gas. She flies backward. As she's doing so, she almost hits the fence, and then she peels out of the parking lot. So as she drives further and further out, she is super nervous and does not want to look in the rearview mirror for fear of seeing it might be chasing her. So she waits till she gets mostly out of the parking lot, and then she looks back and she does see it's just standing there, staring at her in the same position it was when she peeled away. And then she takes a turn and leaves the parking lot, and she's gone. He said that when Jess was telling him the story, that she was so shaken up while telling it that she had to take multiple breaks during it to sort of keep her composure because it was that terrifying for her. And for years afterwards, she said she was terrified of being outside alone in the dark. Even residential areas, she made sure not to be alone anywhere after dark. Obviously, still to this day, she's absolutely terrified of being anywhere near the woods at night. Jess's brother even asked, what about being under the influences or on substances? And she said absolutely not, because one, she was already really mentally messed up because of being in that abusive relationship. And two, he had such a control over her. She wasn't even allowed to go out and drink with friends on the weekends. So no way was she in any way under the influence of anything when this happened. So what are your thoughts? Are we thinking rake again? I know it's a very similar description as the creature we talked about in last night's story. So I would love to hear your comments. Drop them below. And if you have your own creepy cryptid story, I would love to hear it. And if you're interested in Creepy Storytime merch, I would love for you to check out the link also in my bio. And if you're new here, give me a follow and come back for more Creepy Storytime.
Some time ago, we went on a trip. We had a great time swimming and taking pictures, but when we checked our phones later, the first picture felt pretty creepy. If you look closely, right on top of the cap, it looks like there's a pale person standing in the background. None of us noticed anyone behind us when the photo was taken, making the whole thing even more chilling. My name is Reem, and I'm from Bangladesh. One night in 2023, my mom suddenly called my name because she thought she heard someone downstairs in our salon. My dad wasn't home that night, so I went on and checked the CCTV cameras. At first, everything seemed normal. But when we replayed the footage, we noticed something strange. A dark shadow figure appeared to walk across the salon. And to this day, we really don't know what we saw. But since then, weird activity has continued. This group photo was taken during All Saints' Day, a time when families gather to remember and honor their departed loved ones. In the middle of the gathering, we decided to capture the moment with a quick snapshot. But when we looked back at the picture later, the festive mood instantly faded as we noticed something chilling on the side. What appears to be the distinct and eerie figure of a strange child standing right among us, blending into the crowd where no one was actually supposed to be.
When my son described ghosts that tucked him into bed, he repeated the exact same words used on me 20 years earlier. So a woman from Savannah, Georgia named Kim sent me this story, and she swears that every word of it is true. But like always, I can't verify any of it, so take it as entertainment and you decide for yourselves then. And seeing as I am currently in Savannah, I figured this was the greatest time to tell the story. Now, Kim grew up inside of an old plantation house that had been in her father's family for generations, and her father passed away when she was only 9 years old. But long before that, something inside the house had already decided it was going to help raise her. And according to Kim, she spent the first years of her life growing up inside of this old plantation home that had belonged to her father's family for over generations upon generations. The house was absolutely beautiful, actually quite like right there. It was very old, very, very beautiful, very big, and every floorboard groaned whenever someone walked on it, and every floorboard had a tale to tell of their own. Now, her father passed away unexpectedly when she was around 9 years old, but before he passed, something strange happened, already started to become part of her nightly routine. And from the time she was about 3 years old until she was 7 or 8, every single night she would hear footsteps, not random noises, they were actual footsteps walking down the old wooden hallway toward her bedroom where she slept. And she remembers lying perfectly still, listening as though each step was coming for her, and as each step got closer, then the footsteps would stop outside of her bedroom door, and the old brass doorknob would slowly turn, and the door would creak open, and an elderly man and woman would quietly walk inside. They never frightened her. It was never anything scary or anything like that to her. In fact, she said they were very comforting, and the woman would gently pull the blankets over her shoulders while the man would smile down at her. Then they would tell her goodnight, tuck her into bed, and then quietly leave. Every night, like loving grandparents, they did this night after night. The strange part was that she recognized them because hanging in the room, in the living room, was this massive oil painting of the exact same elderly couple dressed in elegant clothing that looked like it had come straight out of a 1920s picture film. And she'd tell her parents that the couple from the painting came into her room every night to say goodnight to her. Now, her mother would smile, and her father would, of course, laugh it off as, some vivid imagination that a child has. But eventually, and sadly, the visits stopped. And by the time she was 10, they had completely disappeared from her life, these mysterious people. And years had passed. She grew up, she got married, she had children of her own. And, eventually she inherited several family heirlooms from her mother's house, including those same enormous oil paintings from her childhood. She hung them in the hallway of her own home, and for almost a year, nothing strange would happen. Then, one evening, as she was tucking her youngest son into bed, he casually looked toward the hallway, and he had asked her, "Mom, who are those old people standing out there?" And she was completely confused, and she had asked him, like, "What did you mean? Who are you talking about?" And he pointed toward the bedroom door, and he just said, "The old man and the old lady." And her stomach dropped because, he continued on telling her that they come into his room every single night to say goodnight to him and to tuck him in. She froze, and then he smiled, and he said something that made her every hair on her body stand up. And he said that the woman, the older woman that would come in with the gentleman, told him that, your mommy used to love when we tucked her into bed. And the next morning, she drove straight to her mother's house, still shaking, and she asked who the elderly couple in the painting actually were. And her mother told her that those were her father's great-grandparents and family members that she had never met before. People who had passed decades before she was ever born or ever a thought. Yet somehow they knew her. And if her son's story is true, they still consider themselves part of the family to this day. So the question is, were they simply watching over generations that they never got to meet? Or did something inside that old plantation house follow the family wherever they went? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Yes, it is hot as hell here.
There is a creature out west that we don't say the name of, and I am almost certain that this person saw one of them. I'm really unnerved by this story, and I have chills just sitting out here knowing I have to read it to you guys. So you know the drill. Grab a drink, grab a cozy blanket, and settle in while I tell you a scary story in my garden, after dark. Welcome to Ghosts in the Garden. I have been a skeptic ever since hearing about this creature. I've avoided saying the word, and whenever they're mentioned in conversation, I abruptly try to do everything in my power to distract myself from the word in order to prevent them from being driven toward me. For this reason, I'll be using the word creature instead of the actual name. Frankly, I'm not entirely sure if this thing really was one of those creatures, but I digress. I was on my way home from a friend's house, a bit groggy and feeling a bit down. I live about 30 minutes away in a small rural area. I try to keep a good eye on the roads at this time of year because we live in deer country and I don't want to hit anything. I drove my normal way home, and all was well until turning off the highway and onto the back road leading to my home. There is a large hill that has low visibility right at the intersection on this road. As I approached this hill and then crossed over the horizon of it, I saw this creature sitting on the side of the road. It was sitting completely motionless, tongue out, and staring at my vehicle. It looked mostly like a dog, sort of brown and black and splotchy. However, I am 100% certain that this was not a dog. Its eyes were large and lifeless. It didn't move at all. The only movement I ever saw was a small twitch of an ear, and that's the only way I knew that it wasn't dead. It was hunched over like some sort of demented gargoyle. Initially, I went to honk at it, but as soon as my fingers grazed my horn, I was paralyzed in fear. I couldn't move. It was just there, hauntingly staring right at me. It was the eyes that terrified me, those absolutely ungodly eyes. Dread consumed me, and I hit the gas as hard as I could and turned onto another road. This was a gravel road, but I sped as fast as I could the entire way home, about 4 miles away. I got home, ran inside the house as fast as I could, and locked myself in my room the entire night. I couldn't move, and I sure couldn't sleep. I am absolutely petrified and certain that that was not a dog or anything of the sort. I apologize if my writing is poor, but I am terrified every time I talk about this, and I really don't like to think about it. I'm going to have trouble again sleeping tonight after reliving this in my mind. If anyone can ease my mind that this is not what I thought it was, that would be amazing, but I am horrified to think that it may be exactly what I think. I think they are spot on about what that is, especially considering they live out west. I used to live out west and I never saw one of these, but I heard rumors from my friends, especially those who lived on the reservations in their childhood. Please leave your thoughts below, and if you have your own story to send in, I would love to hear it. But as always, I will see you again on another dark night in my garden for another scary story. Bye.
I'm being fully honest when I say I have never in my life experienced anything paranormal or given it much thought. However, on this particular night, I was on my way home from work when I came across the site of an accident. I decided to take some photos to show my wife when I got home. In one of those photos, I captured this, and at no point did I see that woman anywhere near the scene. My friend sent me this last night. We work night shift from home, and she went for a smoke break at 4 a.m. While she was out there, she saw this on her neighbor's roof. This was taken at a family gathering. Nobody noticed anything at the time. It wasn't until later when I was looking through the photos and zoomed in on the window that I realized what was there. You can make out what looks like a face looking at us from inside. And if you made it to the end of this video and you're not properly scared, here's a bonus photo.
Alex claims that when he was a kid, he met someone under his back porch that changed his life forever. He grew up with neglectful parents at best, and at worst, his dad would turn his screams and his fists on his child, but he learned pretty quickly how to dodge the worst of it. Now, his mom was not very much help in any of this. All she would do is just hang out in the kitchen and smoke her cigarettes. At the time, they basically lived in the middle of nowhere. It was a really long walk for a 6-year-old to the next neighbor's house, so that meant there was no one to run to for any sort of help. Alex was a pretty small kid, so he learned pretty early on that he could fit into very tight places. He could hide behind the futon, he could hide in the dryer. He basically became a master of hiding. This one particular night, though, he chose to do something a little bit different. He could hear his dad's yells, and they were starting to get violent. And his mom was not helping the situation. She was basically just adding fuel to the fire. So Alex knew that he had to find a really good spot to hide. And he had actually found just a few days earlier that there was a hole in their back porch. Now, this was not big enough for any sort of grown man to fit through, but it was just big enough for a small, skinny 6-year-old to fit through. So he wrapped himself in a blanket and grabbed his hippo stuffed animal and crawled into the hole. Now, this was in the middle of autumn, so it was cold outside. It was 40 degrees and dropping. When he crawled in, he got all sorts of scrapes and even a couple splinters in his hand, but he fit. It was actually pretty spacious compared to most of his hiding spaces. The biggest issue came in with the ground, because it was still a little bit wet from the rain that happened a few days earlier. So Alex curled himself up into a ball and covered himself with his blanket, but at this point, he was freezing cold and his teeth were chattering. But being down there was better than being up in the house with his dad acting the way that he was. Suddenly, Alex heard a voice, and it said, "Honey, are you cold?" This was not the voice of his mom, because his mom's voice was much more scratchy and more hoarse from all the smoking. This voice was sweet, like honey. So he turned toward the direction where the voice was coming from, and he could see the outline of a woman laying on the ground next to him. She had a pretty butterfly necklace, and she was just about as dirty as Alex was. At this point, Alex just nodded, not really thinking about how this woman was down here and he hadn't noticed. The woman started to crawl forward, and she wrapped herself around Alex to keep him warm. He compares it to sitting next to a campfire. That's how warm he felt. The woman said, "You've gotten so big, Alex. How old are you now?" So Alex says, 6. And he's still kind of thinking, like, where do I know this woman from? The woman says, 6? Wow, you're all grown up now. So Alex then asks, "What's your name?" And she responds, "Lily." She then asks Alex, "What is your favorite thing to do?" And he responds, "I like board games and I like coloring." And Lily says, wow, I like board games too. I love Scrabble. Alex really wants to play Scrabble, but it's a lot of words for a 6-year-old. So Lily says, maybe one day we'll play. Lily then tells Alex, I need you to listen to me. Your daddy put me under here, so I can't leave. And then she says, Alex, could you do me a favor? She then says, when you wake up, I need you to go to the police station and ask for an officer by the name of Lowell Joyce. And I need you to tell him where he can find Lily, under the back porch. Then he'll come and get me, and maybe then we can play Scrabble. Alex was just excited at the idea of finally being able to play Scrabble, so he asked Lily, can we be on the same team? And she says, of course. Then she says, good night, Alex, and he falls asleep. He wakes up in the morning and immediately hears Lily's voice, saying, go now, Alex, your dad's at work. So Alex put on his shoes and his coat and started walking toward town. But keep in mind, this is a distance for him because the neighbor's house is already far enough. He had to walk for almost 2 hours. Just as he was getting a little bit turned around, suddenly he heard Lily's voice saying, okay, now cross the street. So he listened. And then she said, okay, now you need to make a right. And it's right there. By the time Alex made it into the lobby of the police station, he basically collapsed on the floor. And one of the officers came running up to him, asking him if he's okay. He immediately says, I need to speak to Lowell Joyce. So they put him in a holding area that was warm, they get him a change of clothes, and he waits for the sheriff. Sheriff Joyce comes in and speaks to Alex. Alex looks him straight in the eye and says, I was told to tell you that Lily is under the back porch, and you need to go and get her so we can play Scrabble. Officer Joyce turns pale. At this point, a lot of things blurred together. He remembers going back to his house and the house being covered in yellow caution tape, and them taking his dad away in handcuffs. After that, he lived with his grandparents, Sheriff Joyce, and his wife. He tried asking about what happened to Lily, but he kept getting shut down because he was just too young to know. But life got better, like a lot better for him. Sheriff Joyce was the best grandpa that he could ever ask for. And when he turned 16, his grandpa finally took him back to his dad's house, and they had bulldozed the entire thing. Then they sat down on the back of his truck. He opened up a beer and gave Alex an orange soda. They sat and they drank about the entire can before his grandpa said, Lily was your mother. So Alex asked, my mom? That doesn't make any sense because my mom lived with my dad. But Officer Joyce tells him, no, Lily was your actual mother. Officer Joyce then says, Lily was my daughter, and I loved her so much. But when you were about 6 months old, she vanished. Alex's dad had imprisoned her under the porch. His grandpa then asks, what I've never been able to understand all these years is that you said that Lily told you to come and find me. How did you know that she was under there? So Alex explains everything, that she kept him warm that night, and that he probably would have froze to death had she not been there. But Alex still remembers one crucial detail from that night, is that his mom had on a butterfly necklace. And that same butterfly necklace was still on her body when they pulled her out from underneath that porch. This story makes me both scared and really, really sad at the same time. Thank you for listening to today's story on Explore Paranormal. I'm gonna go cry. Throw a heart on the video if you liked it, and leave a comment if you... See, I'm sad. Anyways, leave a comment if you guys like the story. Let me know your thoughts. And give me a follow if you like stories like this, because I tell them all the time. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
The Airbnb host told us to not go near the shed in the back. So this happened last fall. My friends and I, it was kind of a bigger group, we decided to go have a fun weekend at an Airbnb that was pretty deep into the woods. Like, I'm talking no neighbors, lots of woods around, not much cell service. When we pulled up, the owner himself was there and he handed us the keys and he said, I'm just gonna give you a word of advice, like, you don't need to go back by the shed, just kind of stay on the other parts of the land. He didn't really give a reason why, he just said, it's not necessary, you don't go over there. So I figured maybe he just had some personal things or belongings
out in the shed. So that first night, we were having a great time. We had dinner, we played card games, we sat by the fire. It was a good night. It was around 12 a.m. and we were just kind of talking amongst ourselves. And one of my friends, he goes, "Do any of you guys hear that scratching?" And we all kind of went quiet and listened for a second. And then that's when we could hear scratching kind of over by that shed area. And we figured that it was maybe just like a raccoon or something, or some kind of animal. So fast forward, we went to bed that night, and then the next morning we decided to go check it out. So we all walked over to the shed, right? And we noticed that there's a big padlock on it. It was rusted, it was old, like it hasn't been used in a while. The windows of the shed were actually boarded closed. They had like little cracks though in between that you could look through. So that's what one of my friends did, is he looked through, and he kind of seemed a little off put afterwards. And I was like, "Did you see something?" He said, "No, I didn't see anything, but something just didn't feel right." And he looked a little pale for a couple minutes after doing that. That night I woke up around 3 a.m. I heard footsteps outside of my bedroom, like outside of the cabin. And it sounded like somebody was circling kind of around the area. And I looked outside. I didn't see anybody, but I did notice that the shed door was wide open. Now, I know that that was shut during the day. I'm very confused how it was open, or did one of my friends break it open, or were they doing something when I was asleep? I don't know. I didn't want to wake all of my friends up, so I just convinced myself it wasn't a big deal, and I eventually fell back asleep. This morning, I happened to wake up before anybody else did, and I went to go investigate again. I went over to the shed, and the padlock was back on it, like in the same place that it was before. It was like nobody touched this door. So I chalked it up to, okay, I'm crazy, I'm imagining things, maybe it was a dream, I don't know. Anyways, this is the day that we are leaving from this Airbnb, and as we are loading up our car, the owner drives up to collect the keys from us. And I actually did ask him, I said, "So why were you telling us like not to go over to the shed area? Like, I'm just curious." And he said, "Because every couple months he gets somebody talking about how the shed door opens at night." I just kind of looked at him, I'm like, "Oh, but it's like locked, like how would they get it open? That's so confusing." And he kind of just looked over at the shed and he was like, "I know it, I don't understand it either, but did you by chance hear any footsteps?" That made me feel gross because I hadn't told him anything about footsteps. I didn't even tell any of my friends about that situation that happened the night before. So there's no way he would have gotten that information from me. And I was like, "How did you know that?" And he was still just like looking at the shed. And he's like, "They never stay by the shed." What does that mean? Like, he kind of just left it on that note, and then he got in his truck and he drove away. So I was just left there to sit and think about what he meant by that. Anyways, right before we were going to get in our car to pull off, I actually went back to the shed and I tugged on the lock and I tried tugging on the door. Obviously, it wasn't going to open. I was just curious what would happen. As I turned to walk away, I hear 3 footsteps, and it's not coming from outside of the shed. It definitely came from inside of that shed. The footsteps were heavy enough where there was creaking on the wood floors on the inside. I didn't stay long enough to figure out what was in there. I quite literally ran to my car and I left, and I have never been back.
Let's read a scary Reddit story. I am currently job searching, which means I have been spending way too much time on Reddit, and I want to share some of the scariest stories that I've come across. This week's theme is Louisiana, because that's my home state and Louisiana is haunted as fuck. This story is a short one, but it is scary, so get ready. I moved to New Orleans in 2013 from Ohio. I was 43 and a year out of a long-term relationship. I didn't know anyone, but working as a nurse, I quickly made friends and spent many days and nights in the French Quarter. About 6 months after my move, some friends and I made a short trip to Houma, Louisiana to a local bar. The owners were friends of my friends and offered for us to spend the night at their place in Houma. That way, we didn't have to drive after a night out. Their home was beautiful, a converted convent with many rooms and a gorgeous yard and garden. After our arrival, my friends told me that I was going to sleep in the carousel room. They had stayed in the home many times, and they thought I would like this particular room. The room was completely decorated in a carousel theme. The figurines, wall art, and sculptures were all of carousel horses. I had my own bathroom and a beautiful canopy bed, with dark curtains around it and a light-colored bedspread. I go to bed after winding down the living room with my friends and fall asleep pretty quickly. This is when things start to take a turn. I awake to the bed shaking. Not the shaking of someone grabbing the bed and shaking it, but a very quick shake, like a small tremor. I open my eyes and adjust to the light of the nighttime light coming through the window. I rolled over onto my right side, and there was a small child lying next to me. I couldn't tell if it was a girl or a boy, only that they were shivering like from a fever. There was a cloth across their forehead, and when I asked if they were okay, they turned their face towards mine and then vanished. I wasn't startled, but I sat up on the side of the bed. I was trying to make sure that I was awake and not dreaming. I walked to the bathroom and drank a glass of water, and then went back to the bed and fell asleep again. The next day, I woke up and joined my friends in the kitchen for breakfast. They were very curious as to how I slept. I told them what had transpired in the night, and they kind of giggled. They said that they had hoped something would happen. They then explained that when the house was a working convent, the room I had stayed in was once a nursery for unwanted children abandoned there. I don't know if the child appeared because they knew I was a nurse and felt safe, or if they were just looking for help. But what I do know was, up to that point in my life, I did not believe in the paranormal. But I do now. I hope you enjoyed me reading this story. If you or someone that you know has any ghost stories, please send them to me. I would love to read them on here. Have a spooky rest of your day. Bye.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. This Airbnb left us with a lot of stories. A couple of years ago, my family decided to take a small trip to Manchester. The place was sentimental to us. Our family experienced special memories there. It's where my parents met, and where both me and my younger sister were born, so it was going to be a beautiful trip for us all. My youngest sister had never been since she was born, so we wanted to take her around and show her the places that meant something to our family. Since there were 5 of us, we decided to rent an Airbnb instead of staying in a hotel. We wanted some extra space and the feeling of having our own place for the weekend. Now, before I continue, I should mention that my family has never experienced any kind of anything paranormal before. We don't have stories of strange or unexplained things happening to us, but that didn't stop both me and my mom from being strong believers in the supernatural. Anyway, the day came, the Airbnb was booked, and our trip began. We pulled up to the home and started bringing out our bags. The moment I stepped inside the house, I knew. I could physically feel it. Something was off. Something was wrong. I didn't know what, but it was there. Even though I was uncomfortable, I didn't want it to get to me, and I wanted to enjoy this trip. So I told myself it was probably just because it was a new place, a different environment, and maybe I was just feeling nervous. So I ignored it. My sisters and I started exploring the house, arguing over who would get which room, opening cupboards and looking through everything, just gauging where to put what. And that's when I found something strange. In the coat cupboard next to the front door, tucked away inside, was a small charm. At first, I thought it was unusual. I've always been interested in things like that, and I know many charms are believed to be used for protections, but finding it hidden away in that cupboard made me feel uneasy. Still, though, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to scare anyone or make my family start worrying if it was nothing. So quietly, I put it back exactly where I had found it and left it. After we had all chosen our rooms and settled in, my mom suddenly started feeling very unwell. Normally, though, she gets sick easily, so we assumed it was from the 2-hour drive, not eating properly, or just being tired, and we left it at that. We were convinced that she just needed to rest. Later that night, though, she came to a strange realization. Anytime we would leave the home, she instantly felt better. When we would return, so would her illness. So that evening, we went out for food and played games, and she was feeling better. It was time to go back, though, and when we got back, we noticed immediately that something was wrong. The shower in my parents' bathroom was on, and it had clearly been used. We had been gone for around 5 hours. No one had turned it on before leaving, and nobody had come back while we were out. We settled on it being an old house. Maybe it was plumbing. Maybe something had malfunctioned. Anything logical. But things would only get more strange. The bedroom I was staying in had a connecting door to the main bathroom. The door had a lock on it, and because my youngest sister was only 7 at the time, I decided to lock it so she wouldn't accidentally wake me up during the night. I checked the lock. It worked. I checked it again before going to sleep, and it was definitely locked. When I woke up in the morning, though, the bathroom door was wide open. I stared at it, confused and a little scared, but I convinced myself it was probably my sister. I told her not to open it again, but over the next few days, every single night, I locked that door. Every single time, I checked it, and every single morning, it was wide open. Eventually, our trip ended and we went home. And after we left the Airbnb, everyone finally started talking about what they had experienced. My little sister suddenly broke down crying. She said that she had been terrified the entire time and kept hearing things at night. My other sister, who was 14, said she heard someone snoring throughout the night. Nobody else heard it. My mom told us that she had a similar experience to mine. She kept thinking that my dad was messing with the curtains because they would move or change position. She even got annoyed at him for it. But my dad swore he never touched them. And speaking of my dad, he's not someone who scares easily. But even he admitted that he never wanted to return to that house. He says one night, while everyone else was asleep, he looked out toward the kitchen, and there was a woman sitting there. The kitchen lights were on, and she didn't move for almost an hour. She didn't react to him or even appear to blink. She just sat there, still as a statue, watching.
Want to play something scary? Have you ever played the Midnight Man? No? Me either. Want to play it? Before I actually start talking about how to play the game, there are strict rules that I need to go over for your own safety. Do not turn the lights on. Do not use a flashlight. Do not use a lighter instead of matches. Do not leave the house. Do not fall asleep. And do not provoke the Midnight Man. This game was originally used as a punishment to punish those who went against the gods of this religion. It has not been practiced for a very long time, but this game still has risks of insanity, unalive, and prolonged danger. So play at your own risk. To begin the game, you need paper and a writing utensil, matches and a candle, a drop of your own blood, and table salt, as well as the door you're going to use for this game. It can be just like the door behind me, but it needs to be a wooden door. Once you have all of these things prepared, bring the piece of paper and write your full legal name onto it. Place it in front of the wooden door and prick your finger so that a drop of your blood goes onto the paper and soaks into it. Then take the candle, place it over the paper, and light it. Do not turn on any lights in your house. All the lights need to be off at this point. The only thing that should be on is this candle. And do not use anyone else's blood. Use only your blood. In order to actually summon the Midnight Man, you need to knock on the door exactly 22 times. The last knock needs to be right when the clock turns midnight. Once you do this, open the closed door and then shut it, and then blow out the candle. Once you do this, the Midnight Man is now in your house. After you blow out the candle, immediately relight it. Now, the only thing you have to do is stay alive until 3:33 a.m. And this is where the rules I stated at the beginning come into play. You need to abide by every single one of those rules, or the Midnight Man might just decide he doesn't want to play with you anymore. He might make it extremely terrifying or just simply unalive you right there. Move around your house with the candle in your hand and the matches as well as the table salt on you at all times. Do not stop moving. You need to keep moving around your house until 3:33 a.m. If your candle goes out, you need to relight it immediately within 10 seconds. If you don't relight it in time, the Midnight Man will get you. That means he will either make horrifying hallucinations of your worst fears start to show right in front of you, or I've read that he will literally just start taking your organs out one by one. So I'd suggest having those matches ready. If your candle goes out and refuses to be lit again, immediately make a circle of salt around you and stay in it until 3:33 a.m., no matter what. But how do you know if the Midnight Man is near? Some ways to tell are an intense drop in temperature, shadow figures, incoherent whispering, or the candle will just blow out with no cause. So why do you need to constantly be moving around your house? Think of it this way. If somebody has a pew-pew and they're shooting at you and you just stand, you're going to be a lot easier of a target. But if you're running in a zigzag pattern, constantly moving, they're a lot less likely to hit you. Finally, when the clock strikes 3:33 a.m., the game is finished. You may now step outside the circle of salt if you had to do that, or blow out the candle, open all the curtains, turn on the lights, whatever, the game is done. This is one of the few games I've covered that is multiplayer. You can play it with more than one person. The only catch is that every single person needs to do these individual steps. Like the paper part and the blood at the beginning, everybody needs to do that. So you may be asking, Kendall, well, what do I get if I win this game? Nothing. You get nothing. Now, I know that's not really very exciting. You just kind of don't get to die, which I mean, I think is pretty great personally. So although I am not brave enough to play this game, who knows? Maybe you are. Good luck.
I grew up hearing stories about the Appalachian Mountains. My grandparents would always tell us kids that there were just simply places out there that you should not be after dark. Their stories were very rarely about the monsters of the Appalachian Mountains, more over the people that we could encounter out in those mountains. They would always tell us, if you're ever out there and then realize that you're not alone, just don't go looking who's watching for you, just get out of there. I feel like that should just be rule of thumb everywhere, not just in the Appalachian Mountains. My grandparents definitely instilled that into us kids. But as kids, I always assumed that, it was just like another mountain superstition, because if you live out in those areas, like, you know how much superstition, how much folklore there is about like random shit. I honestly thought that they were just telling me these things so that I wouldn't wander out too far, which, to be fair, I did wander out far a lot. As I grew up, I started to realize that they were doing that out of like sheer protection. Like, they were trying to protect me. Like, they were trying to prepare me for something, or I don't know, just to be ready for anything. A few summers ago, I decided to go hiking out to this like abandoned fire tower that was going viral online. Not really viral, but on the urbex side of TikTok. It was going kind of viral on that side of TikTok, so I decided that I wanted to go explore it as well. The trail was not supposed to be like a difficult trail. I'm an avid hiker anyway, so like even if it was difficult, it wouldn't have been an issue, but this one in particular was not supposed to be like grueling at all. It was just like this old logging trail or whatever, you know logging trails, and it just kind of like broke off into the forest. And I was not worried in the slightest. I had snacks, I had water, I had my pack, I had everything I needed. And I figured that I would just be back to my car before dinner. But about an hour into the hike, I realized that I hadn't seen a trail marker in a very long time. It wasn't enough to make me panic right off the bat, but like it was enough to make me kind of slow down and like try to get my bearings. I pulled out my phone and I'm trying to like check the map that I had previously downloaded before going on this hike, but I had absolutely no service, and for some reason my downloads were just not downloaded. I fucking don't know. Don't ask me. Seriously, I'm so sick of Apple for this reason, and many more reasons, to be honest, but that's a whole other video in itself. But again, I wasn't too crazily concerned, because I mean, you're going out into the woods, like, you expect these bad things to happen, like, you have full expectation that something is going to go wrong. So I was like, of course it's this that has to go wrong, right? I just started to keep walking, and as I kept walking, I started to notice something off about the trees around me. Almost every single one had this really long vertical cut through its bark. They weren't any kind of like hiking blazes or like initials or anything that somebody had carved in there intentionally. Still did look intentional, but it just looked like somebody had like intentionally dragged a knife across, like, and making slashes through these tree trunks. I'm like, okay, whatever, maybe these are some like kind of weird forestry marking or something. The further down that I went, the newer the cuts became. It gave me a really weird feeling, but I was trying my hardest to convince myself that there was a logical explanation behind it, because I'm out there by my fucking self. Then, as I'm standing there trying to figure out a logical explanation for it all, I hear a whistle. And it wasn't like a bird whistle or like anything like that. It was just one single like whistle. I almost whistled, but it's fucking 5 a.m. But anyways, after hearing it, I stopped and I listened, and I'm like just standing there listening. And I noticed that the forest had become dead silent. You know, there was like birds before, the skittering of little forest animals on the forest floor and stuff like that, but they would just all stopped. And so I call out and I ask if anybody is out there. And I know everybody always asks me, if you grew up in Appalachia and you know the rules of the mountains, why the fuck would you ever do that? But like I said in the beginning of this, I was a child who thought that like my family was just telling us this stuff to bullshit us. So any chance that I got, I would just try and test these rules, you know? Anyways, I call out and I get silence in response. So I shrug it off and I just keep walking, because what the fuck else am I gonna do? I'm just out there by myself. And literally just like a minute later, I hear another whistle, but this time it comes directly behind me. I spin around and I'm expecting to see another hiker standing there, but there was not a single other person in sight. That's when I noticed that there was somebody standing, like peeking out from behind a tree that was a little bit further down the ridge from me. They were too far away from me to make out any details about them, but I could clearly tell that they were facing me. And they weren't like moving or waving or anything, they were just kind of fucking standing there. So me just thinking that it was another hiker or something, I raised my hand up and I wave at them like a normal hiker would do, being polite on the trail so that you don't get murdered. But they never reacted. So I'm starting to think, okay, maybe something's wrong with them. Maybe they need help or something. So I start walking towards them. But the moment that I got close enough to see their face, they stepped behind the tree. When I reached the spot where they had been standing, there was nobody standing there. Like nobody was there. And I didn't hear any footsteps of anybody walking away, no snapping of the twigs or literally anything at all. No explanation. Literally just a set of bare footprints behind the tree. Just a single pair of fucking footprints. Oh my god, I can't make this shit up. At first though, I felt relief because I was like, okay, this means that I'm not crazy. I really did see somebody here. But like, so at that point I'm like, okay, it's time to head fucking back, especially because these things were not facing the opposite direction. They were facing where I was standing, meaning whoever was standing there literally just watching me the whole time. So I pulled out my compass and I'm walking in the direction that I'm hoping is going to lead me to the trailhead. And before I'd gone even fucking 50 yards, I hear another whistle. Then another answered that whistle from off to my right. And then a third one came from up further beyond the hill. Like honestly, it sounded like they were communicating, like it was not just random sounds in the woods anymore. As I kept walking, the whistles just kept changing positions until it slowly dawned on me that they were not following me from behind. They were like keeping close contact, like from each side of me, you know what I mean? Like it felt like I was walking in the middle of them and they were just all on the outskirts. I never once heard anybody running. I never once heard another footstep. I never once heard any kind of like actual voice other than a whistle. Every now and then I would catch like a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, like a shoulder peeking out from behind a tree or like something like a foot fucking scattering that I thought to be somebody's crouching behind a bush. But at the time I just told myself, that's just a rock, girl, you're fine, keep going. Every time I would turn my head fully, there would be nothing there for me to see, you know what I mean? I eventually caught the smell of fire smoke drifting through the woods, and at first I felt relief because I was like, okay, maybe there's like a house or like a cabin nearby and they can point me in the direction of the trailhead or the road or wherever, like get me the fuck out of here. I did find a cabin, but it was like this old, crusty, musty, dusty looking thing. Like honestly, like it pieced together by decades of junk that somebody had just found. I'm talking rusted sheet metal, fucking old license plates. This was built out of literal junk. Honestly, it didn't look abandoned, but it also didn't look like a very pleasant place to be or like a place you want to go knock on the door. Then I noticed that there was shoes, like dozens of children's shoes fucking scattered all over the front porch. Tiny little sneakers, worn out boots, little teeny tiny sandals. None of them had a matching pair and they all looked like they had been sitting there for fucking decades. Every instinct in me told me to fucking get out of there, so I start backing away as slowly as I can, just kind of like looking, hoping that I'm not gonna make any sounds. As I'm backing away, the front door slowly creaks open. It only opened up a few inches, like I couldn't see who was inside, I couldn't see anything inside. All I heard was the voice that came out of the crack. The voice came from the crack in the door and they said, "Are you lost?" And I just keep taking more steps backwards because I'm like, oh hell no. And then the voice asks me if I'm hungry. And then the voice asked me if I was hungry. You know, they're like, come on, come, we'll help you. Are you hungry? You want some food? Before I could even think of responding, another voice came from behind the door and it said no. And then everything went silent. I heard several people whimpering, like little tiny voices whimpering from behind the door. I honestly, at that moment, I did not wait to find out what they were saying or what was going on. I booked it and ran as fast as I possibly could. My lungs were burning and my legs literally felt like they were about to give out. I don't think I've ever pushed myself as hard as I did that day. And the weirdest part is I didn't hear anybody chasing me. Like nobody was giving chase. I was just running for my life. The only sound that stayed with me the entire time was the whistling. Like it kept moving with me and it was always somewhere above, like somewhere ahead of me, you know what I mean? Then it was beside me, then it was beside me again, but always like a little bit in front, never like directly beside me. It was always like, you know what I mean? Eventually, after running for what seemed like fucking hours, but I'm sure it was only maybe like 10 minutes, burst out onto this gravel road where this guy was like putting firewood in the back of his truck and he's like, oh my god. Before I could even explain to this man what happened, he looked at me, looked at the tree line, looked at me again, looked at the tree line, grabbed my arm, threw me in his truck, which if I wasn't already scared as fuck what was beyond those woods in the tree line, I would have been horrified that this man grabbed me and threw me in his truck. Something told me, like, I just knew that he was saving me from something, okay? Like, he knew what was going on. He knew something about what was in the forest. Whatever. He didn't mention anything about it, and I didn't talk to him about it in there. I was just like, thank you so much for picking me up. I was, like, freaking out. And then he brought me back to town. And that was that. So if there's rules of the mountains that you live near, or if there's rules in general, follow them because they're there for a reason.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, is yeah. Hi, bestie boo, I missed you. It's time to get your snack. And don't forget your gardening essentials, okay? All right. So it has come to my attention yet again, there are some newcomers that are complaining about the intro. And there are also some not so newcomers that are complaining that I promote my book in every video. And to that, I say, I don't give a fuck. The intro is staying because it's not for y'all. Y'all are new. It's for my OGs. And I'm going to keep promoting my book because it is my business. If you have a business, you should be doing the same. People should be annoyed at how much you promote your business, okay? Anyway, let's get on to the story. So for the sake of the story, let's call this person Dana. So Dana's parents were together for about like 7 to 8 years before Dana came along. And in the beginning, everything was great. Like, Dana's dad was always there for her and her grandparents too. Like, they absolutely adored her. Until Dana's dad ended up going to prison for selling, you know what. Wait, fast forward, he goes to prison, he does his time, he gets out. Even after he got out, he was still a great dad. He was taking care of Dana and everything. He made sure to give Dana's mom some money, like all that good stuff. He was a great dad. So boom, after he gets out, a little bit after, he meets this woman. Let's call her Carrie. At the time, Dana's dad was living with his parents. You know, he just got out. He needs some time, you know? So every summer, Dana basically stayed with her grandparents/dad. So Carrie would always come around, and I mean always come around. Because she was around so much, Dana started to become low-key obsessed with Carrie. Dana's grandma, though, wasn't a big fan of Carrie, being dad's mom. She would always mention to Dana's dad how, like, why is she always here? Like, she's always here. She's here 24/7. Her dad would usually just, like, brush it off and don't even say nothing to Carrie. Mind you, though, Dana's dad is the type that really likes his personal space. So him being okay with her being around 24/7 is very much unlike him. Like, everywhere they went, she was there. It was to the point where, okay, so they're from a small town called Monroeville in Alabama. The closest mall that they had is in Florida. It was to the point where they went to the mall, right? And she was there. Like, she was literally standing at the end of one of the escalators waiting for them. Her dad didn't even tell her where they were going to be. It would be like stuff like that, right? She was young at the time, but she always thought like a situation like that was like weird. Anyway, so after about 3 months of her dad and Carrie dating, her dad basically says, I'm going to propose to Carrie. Obviously, his mom, Dana's grandma, did not like that idea. Like, she told him that was a terrible idea. Please don't do that. However, Dana's dad is hard-headed, and he went and did it anyway. Now, this is where things start to get weird. So they got married. They made Dana the flower girl. They bought a house together. Her dad buys her a Porsche and a dog. At this point, Dana had like a second family, you know? Dana also loved Carrie's mom. She was like a second grandma to her. They would do stuff like baking together, and she loved it. Fast forward a little more, Carrie's parents buys this huge mansion type house. And Dana loved it there. She loves going over there. And it was to the point, and she's sad to admit this now, but it kind of became to a point where she started to like Carrie's mom better than her own grandmother. So I want to note that both families are supposed to be Christian. Except like Dana's family was actually like Christian. Like her grandpa was a deacon and everything. Now, you know how I told you Dana's grandma didn't really like Carrie like that? The feeling was pretty mutual. Like Carrie did not like her either. However, Carrie loved her grandpa because grandpa loves to eat. The crazy part is Carrie don't even know how to cook. She can't really cook like that. But she could make a good drink. She could make a good ass drink.
What she would do is she would constantly bring like cakes and pies that her mom made, and she would bring him for Dana's grandfather, and he would love them, and he would eat, and eventually he loves Carrie too. Basically, everybody loves Carrie except Dana's mom and Dana's grandma. Those two, they're not budging. It's funny because when it comes to Dana's mom, Carrie actually hated her. And it's not like she did anything to her or nothing like that. It would be weird because if Carrie notices something that Dana's mom wear and it's cute, Carrie would copy it. So just to, give you a picture. Boom, fast forward, they're married, mansions are involved in all of that. Eventually, Carrie basically tells Dana's dad, like, hey, let's have kids. Like, I want to have kids. So he's like, okay, they try. However, about 4 to 5 pregnancies that she had all ended in miscarriages. So that became really bad to where she just entirely gave up. She's like, I'm not going to try to have kids anymore. But she has a brand new idea. And this idea is to convince Dana's dad to get full custody of Dana. Dana's dad agreed. They took Dana's mom to court and everything. She won, of course, because it's not like she was an unfit mom. She was a perfect mom. She still felt betrayed because it's like, why would you let this girl convince you to take my daughter away from me? So after they lost the custody battle, it's kind of like Carrie lost all type of interest in Dana. As a result of the custody battle, dad ended up being on child support. So when this happened, it got to a point where it became damn near impossible for Dana to get in contact with her dad. And come to find out, it's because Carrie had her and Dana's dad, let's give him a name, let's call him Mark. Carrie had her and Mark sharing one phone, and she was controlling said phone. She can see any messages, calls, anything that comes in out of it. So anytime Dana or Dana's mom would try to contact him, they can't get through. Which is even funnier because this is so unlike Mark. If anybody knows Mark, Mark is conceited as fuck. He loves himself. He's always taking pictures. He goes places. He loves taking the pictures and sharing them. So sharing a phone really, really did not sound like him. Anyway, the older Dana got, the more estranged she felt from Carrie's family. Like at first it was good, but now it's just kind of like she's just whatever. To the point where whenever Dana was around them, she felt like a damn orphan. She barely stayed at her dad's house anymore. She didn't even have a room there. She was always welcomed, but she never felt welcomed, But that's still her daddy, you know what I mean? So she's like, the one thing that still kept her having go back to that house is just her daddy. So every time she visited, her dad would grill some chicken. And she said it's like literally the best chicken she's ever had. Every time, she don't eat nobody else but her daddy's chicken. But while being over there all the time, she started to notice something. They always had a fly problem. Like even in the wintertime, they always had a fly problem. If you've been following me, if you know, you know. So keep that in mind. Anyway, so whenever she'd go over there, every Sunday they would all go to church. And then after that, they would go to Carrie's mom's house to eat Sunday dinner. Like I said before, at first, everything was good, like she used to love eating dinner at, that house. But eventually she started to notice that the food kept making her nauseous. Every time she ate it, it made her nauseous. So eventually she just kind of stopped eating it. But for some reason, when she stopped eating their food, they started treating her worse. Like the way they treated her started to become unbearable. Damn, I can't speak. Carrie was always nice, nasty to her, like very passive aggressive, For example, some new Yeezys had came out, so her dad was gonna get himself one and get Carrie one too. But Carrie talked him out of getting Dana one too. So they got Yeezys and Dana didn't get anything. Another example is that, what I call her, Carrie? Carrie's dad owned a trucking company and Mark at some point was working for that company. Sometimes Mark would bring Dana along on some of his routes. Carrie was not having it. She said that gotta stop. And she kind of has a say because it's her father's company. Now, while all of this is happening, right? Dana's father started to notice some of these things, right? And when they first moved in together, also being in Carrie's parents' house, he noticed certain decor. And at first, he just thought, oh, okay, African decors, that's cool. But then eventually it started to feel very much like, I don't know, this is very much deeper than just decor. Okay, so keep that in mind. I'm almost running out of time, so comment for part 2. Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come when bestie is. This is part 2, so if you want to catch up, go to part 1. I'm kind of whispering because when I was recording part 1, baby girl was asleep, but then she woke up and I just put her back to sleep, so now I don't want to wake her up anymore. Anyway, so boom, Father's Day comes, right? And Mark and Dana made plans to go fishing together. And Dana was so excited because she's like, oh, finally, I get to spend time with my dad and my dad alone. Like, it's just going to be the two of us. But when it was time to go, of course, Carrie tagged along. Dana was like absolutely pissed, but you know, she can't really say much. When they got to the lake, they were getting out the car. Carrie happened to have like her fingers still within like the car, the crease of the car. And Dana had closed the door on her fingers by accident. And Carrie was livid. She really didn't do it on purpose, but now looking back at it, she's like, I don't even feel bad. Anyway, fast forward. Dana's grandpa passes away, Mark's father. So he passes away and, they have a funeral and everything. So Dana's mom came to the funeral with Dana, out of respect. She never had any issues with Mark's parents, you know what I mean? But when Carrie saw that Dana's mom was there, she was livid. At some point within the funeral, Dana's grandma ended up introducing Dana's mom to Carrie's mom. I'm sorry, I'm really trying to keep up with these names. Y'all know me, I come up with names and can never remember. So it's Dana's mom and Carrie's mom. And Dana's grandma introduces them, right? And as she's like introducing them and they're shaking hands, Dana's grandma basically says, hey, this is Dana's mom. And the moment that Carrie's mom realized that, she drops her hand. Rude, right? But it gets worse. So I'm assuming like on the way out or something like that, Dana's mom goes to speak to Mark just to give her condolences and say, because that's his father. I'm sorry about your father, So when she comes up to Mark and started to give her condolences, immediately Carrie interrupted it. Basically like, cut this shit short. Y'all need to be speaking. But it's like, it's his father's funeral. Anyway, Dana and her mom has had enough, Funeral's done, they go home. And Dana decides to speak up about how she really feels about Carrie and how unwelcome she feels like when she goes over, like everything. So she sits her mom down and she basically tells her mom like, hey, this is how I feel about Carrie. This is how I feel when I go over there. This is how I'm kind of treated. Like, it's not bad, but it's not good either, She puts everything on the table. So naturally, Dana's mom is like, okay, well, we need to have a conversation with your dad. So Dana's mom goes and basically, I guess, tells Mark about everything that Dana said. And so Mark decided, okay, let me speak to Dana about this, right? Now, keep in mind, at this time, Mark is already having like things in his head that just does not sit right with him. And Mark had always been a praying man. You know what I mean? So they both sit down and Dana basically tells her dad, how she really feels. And her dad, Mark, hits her with a bombshell. Mark tells her, I'm getting a divorce. So Dana's like, what? Dad didn't want to get into too many details about it, but basically to give her relief. He's been noticing certain things, and he's been doubling down on praying, and finally he reached the point where he's like, I want to get a divorce. So what he does is he waited until Carrie was gone and he moved all of his things out. And as he was moving out, when he was officially leaving the house, he heard a very loud noise say to him, don't come back. And it was at that point he was like, oh yeah, I made the right decision. And he listened to that voice. He never came back. After he moved out, Carrie repeatedly tried to get in contact with him. He was not having it. He was really standing on business up to the point where he ended up moving to Atlanta. But here's the kicker. He moves to Atlanta, right? The moment he gets to Atlanta, he becomes extremely sick. He started losing a very unhealthy amount of weight. And then he had constant muscle pains. And it was really bad. But thankfully, he ended up meeting a woman who just kept praying over him and gave him, guess what? A spiritual bath, which is what I have in my ebook. If you think I'm lying, let me show you, because y'all be trying to make it seem like I'm lying. See that right there? Yep. I hate that I have to do that sometimes because I be telling myself I don't have to do that. I don't have to keep showing proof, but Yeah, sometimes maybe once in a while it's good to like add it in there, you know? Anyway, after the spiritual bath, Dad started recovering. And guess what? The very next day, you want to know what Carrie did? Carrie drove all the way to Atlanta. At the time, Mark was staying with his sister, which is Dana's aunt. That's who lives in Atlanta. Anyway, she drives all the way to Atlanta to literally beg Mark to take her back. She begged and begged and begged, and he refused. He was not having it. Because like I said, he's a praying man. The moment he found out that you've been using magic on him, he was like, At the time, you know, when it was happening, he didn't know. But as soon as he was aware, he was like, oh, hell no. Anyway, she's begging and begging. He's like, no, thank you. I'm okay. She's asking him, can I please come inside? Like, let me just come inside. Let me just come inside so we could talk. He's still telling her no. So guess what she did, y'all? That lady slept in the driveway. Holy guilt trip. Like, what? Anyway, Dad stood on business. Mark was like, I'm good. Eventually, she went back home. Now, fast forward a few years later, right? Dana, Mark, and Auntie, where Dad was staying at, they're cleaning, they're cleaning up the house and stuff like that. And guess what they find? They found a bowl that was hidden. And inside the bowl, there was a tiny drawstring bag with a pearl in it and a string tied into a knot. If you know, you know. But here's the best part. They're finding this out way after all of that stuff happened. Come to find out, Carrie's dad is not even her biological father. Carrie's mom trapped him the same way Carrie tried to trap Mark. And he ended up basically working himself to death for their family, which is why they ended up in that mansion house that I told y'all about. So this shit was generational, okay? That's why I be telling y'all, these people parents, they not your parents, they their parents. You thinking you in a relationship and you gonna talk to his mom or her mom, 9 times out of 10, they got it from their mama and they papa. But yeah, y'all, that's the story. Don't forget to let me know what you were eating in the comments. And if I want to be honest, I had a very difficult time telling this story. It's like I could not speak the entire time. Like I had to do so many retakes. Look, now I'm talking and it's perfectly fine. But yeah, y'all, don't forget to get y'all ebook too. You see, that spiritual bath the next day, okay? Also, I did just upload a new YouTube video. So if you want to watch, see, look. If you want to watch my story times in long form, please go over to my YouTube and don't watch nobody else's because they're making money off of me. Okay, I love you.
This photo was taken in a museum in Mexico City. The exhibit we were in was strictly for adults, and the entire time we were there, I don't remember seeing a single child. This photo was taken by a resident of the nursing home that my mom works in. Prior to the photo being taken, members of the staff and other residents heard the sounds of a door opening and closing, along with the appearance of a call light turning on and off, yet nobody was in the room. From what I've been told, this picture had been taken roughly 15 minutes after a patient in the building had passed on. This photo is from 1967. The woman on the right wasn't there when the photo was taken, and to this day, nobody really knows who she is.
So I'm currently being haunted by something. The only reason I'm like half laughing is because it's not the first time I get haunted by something. I'm extremely sensitive, so I always have things coming and going. But this specific spirit is super persistent. Let me just turn the lights on so I can give you guys a quick little backstory. 2 days ago, I wake up around 2 a.m. I realize I can't move. Actually, I wake up at 2 a.m. I feel a presence in the room. I have to ignore it. And then I realize I can't move. And I'm like, great, this stupid presence is paralyzing me. As I'm like fighting back, because I always fight back anytime I get paralyzed, I look over and I see the person's face. It was a woman in her 30s. She had long brown hair. I could even see that she had like blonde highlights in the front of her face. And she was like tan skin. She's like holding me down. And I'm like, who are you? Like, what do you want? I'm able to break free, and I think that's just like the end of it. I go back to sleep. The moment I go back to sleep, I get paralyzed a second time. At which point I'm getting annoyed. I'm like, okay, this is not the second time you're paralyzing me. I already told you I don't know who you are. Leave me alone. Break free from that one. Go back to sleep. Now the third time I get paralyzed, I'm literally about to throw hands with this spirit. I jump up out of bed and I'm like, what do you want? Like, you're at this point you're embarrassing yourself. Like why are you doing all this? What's the point? Like, leave me alone. Let me go back to sleep. I end up praying all the prayers and she finally leaves me alone. The next morning I wake up and I move on with my life. I don't even think about it anymore. I just figured it was just like a one-time thing. Until that night, I wasn't home. I was away. My daughter was home and she ended up sleeping in my room. She says that about 2 a.m. she heard somebody going down the stairs. She could hear footsteps going down the stairs and then she heard the footsteps going into my room. I'm literally getting chills telling the story, which is telling me this is a really bad idea because it's here already. But anyways, back to the story. She's hearing the footsteps. She thinks it's my son coming down the stairs. She thinks it's her brother, so she's not really thinking anything of it. She has her back turned towards the door when she then hears the footsteps walk into my room and start walking towards like her side of the bed. Chills are on fire right now. At which point she decides to finally turn around to say something to her brother when she realizes that she can't move. She herself is paralyzed. She starts freaking out, like, oh my God, I'm paralyzed. Like, that's definitely not my brother. Like, what's going on? And she says she feels when this thing stands, like, right where she's at. And it kind of, like, peeks in, sees that it's not me, and then walks out. She hears the footsteps and then leaves. So whatever this is was sent to just piss me off, and great. Now fast forward to tonight. I'm completely home alone. My daughter's not here. She's away with her friends. I am completely home alone with my dog watching Cape Fear. It is now 8:30 p.m. or by the time I post this, it'll probably be closer to 9. So I will keep you guys updated. Wish me all the luck in the world. I have already taken all the necessary measures. I have cleansed the space. I have prayed. I have done all the things. But I currently feel a presence. So, also, you can send spirits to people to piss them off. This spirit was obviously sent by someone to piss me off for some unknown reason.
Let's read a scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie and get cozy because it's creepy cozy time at the Creepy Cozy Cottage. As always, Francesca says hi. My grandfather used to be the caretaker of a remote cemetery nestled in the fields of southwestern Vietnam. It was an ancient graveyard with tombstones over a century old, their surfaces so weathered that the names had long worn away. During the day, there was nothing terrifying about it other than its eerie, hollow stillness. But after sunset, not a single local would dare step foot inside. They said the cemetery belonged to the lantern keeper. Nobody knew who or what he was. They only knew that every night a pale yellow oil lamp drifted quietly between the rows of graves. If you only seen the light from afar, you might live to tell the tale. But if you caught sight of the person holding it, you would never see the light of day again. My grandfather never believed in these rumors. As a military veteran, he was fearless. Having slept in deep jungles and survived heavy artillery, ghost stories were the least of his worries. When he took the job, the former caretaker gave him only one piece of advice. If you see the light wandering among the graves after midnight, stay inside your hut. Don't call out, don't follow it, and whatever you do, don't count how many graves the light passes by. My grandfather just laughed, saying if thieves broke in to steal altar offerings, he'd still have to chase them down. The first 3 months passed without incident. Then came the night near the end of the 7th lunar month, the month of the hungry ghosts. There was no moon and heavy black clouds choked the sky. A harsh wind rattled the eucalyptus trees surrounding the graveyard, making them screech like weeping women. At around 1 a.m., my grandfather's black dog suddenly ducked under the bed, whimpering and refusing to come out no matter how hard he called. Right then, a speck of yellow light appeared outside the window. At first, he assumed it was a local farmer hunting for frogs, but the light moved with a slow, unnatural rhythm, weaving through the graves as if intimately familiar with every path. He checked his watch. It was 1:13 a.m. The lantern kept drifting forward, never speeding up, never slowing down. Eerie silence surrounded it. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, just a small flickering flame swaying in the dark. Curiosity got the better of him. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out of the guard hut. As soon as his foot hit the bottom step, an old man's voice, the elderly laborer who used to work there, shouted sharply behind him, "Don't go out." He spun around. No one was there. Only the howling wind filled the empty cemetery. Shaking off the chill, he pushed forward until he was barely 20 meters from the light. The lantern stopped in front of an unmarked grave. My grandfather aimed his flashlight towards it. There was no one there. The lantern hovered in midair about 3 feet off the ground. Thinking someone had hung it on a branch, he took a few steps closer. At that exact moment, a faint whisper breathed right behind his ear. "Do not stand level with it." He whipped around again, empty. When he turned back, the lantern was gone. In its place was a narrow dirt path that had never existed before, stretching deep into the oldest section of the graveyard. Standing at the far end was a tall figure, clad in a long black cloak, holding the oil lamp. My grandfather said the terrifying part wasn't just the figure's presence, but the impossibility of reading its stance. He couldn't tell if the figure was facing him or turned away. Where its face should have been, there was only a void of absolute darkness. The figure began to walk. Its steps were agonizingly slow, yet the distance between them collapsed impossibly fast. In just seconds, it was less than 10 meters away. Suddenly, the black dog in the hut let out a long, desperate howl. The figure froze. Slowly, it raised the oil lamp overhead. The golden light flared, casting its glow across the surrounding graves. My grandfather froze in horror. The weathered, weed-choked tombstones were suddenly brand new. Every single headstone bore a portrait of the deceased. Hundreds of faces in those photographs turned simultaneously to stare at him. No one was smiling. No one was crying. They were just staring, unblinking. He tried to run, but his legs were pinned. From beneath the soil, countless, pale, deathly hands had broken through the dirt, gripping his ankles with vice-like strength. They were ice cold, as if pulled from frozen water. The more he thrashed, the tighter they squeezed. That was when the lantern keeper spoke. There is room now. The voice was neither old nor young, neither male nor female. It sounded like dozens of voices speaking in eerie unison. Then every tombstone began to shudder. One by one, the engraved names melted away from the stone, leaving only a single blank headstone. The lantern keeper reached into his robe and pulled out a calligraphy brush. Leaning down, he began stroking ink onto the blank stone. Paralyzed with terror, my grandfather watched as the name materialized. It was his own full name. Just then, his black dog burst from the hut, clamped his teeth into the hem of his trousers, and yanked him backwards with all its strength. He tumbled, his head smashing hard against a tombstone, before everything went black. The next morning, villagers found him passed out near the middle of the cemetery, nearly 300 meters from his hut. There were no footsteps in the mud around him, only a single, long drag mark, as though something had pulled him all that way. Most disturbing of all, the soles of his feet were covered in dry incense ash, even though torrential rain the night before had turned the cemetery into a muddy swamp. My grandfather resigned that very day. It was only decades later, shortly after his death, that he finally confided in my father. He confessed that for the rest of his life, every night at precisely 1:13 a.m., he dreamt of the lantern keeper standing at the foot of his bed. With each passing year, the figure crept a little closer. First at the doorway, then the middle of the room, then beside the family altar. In his final days, he said the entity was standing right beside his pillow, barely an arm's length from his face. The night my grandfather passed away, the whole family was gathered around his bed. The moment the clock struck 1:13 a.m., the lights flickered and went out. When power returned a second later, the oil lamp on our ancestor altar burst into flame on its own. My grandmother broke down crying. Just before he took his last breath, my grandfather had stared fixedly into the dark corner of the room and whispered a final warning. Don't let him pass the lantern to anyone. After the funeral, my grandfather returned to the old cemetery to burn incense in his memory. The guard hut was gone, reduced to a cracked concrete slab, and most of the graves had been relocated. While cleaning weeds near the unmarked plot, my father accidentally dug up an ancient, soil-covered oil lamp. The body was rusted through, but the wick looked brand new, completely unburned. He brought it home intending to hand it over to a local museum. That night at exactly 1:13 a.m., the lamp ignited by itself. There was no oil, no match, just a dim yellow flame dancing in the dark room. Panicking, my father threw a thick blanket over it to smother the fire. When he pulled the blanket back, the lamp was gone. In its place was a worn paper, and in black ink was a single sentence: "It's time to find a new lantern keeper."
Lately, there has been times in my life, a little too often, where I have to admit that my mother is right. Ugh, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much. But that woman told me that I got a selective memory, and she's right. I thought I gave y'all part 2 to the Troll Bridge story. My bad. Roll. Boom boom is story time. Boom boom, paranormal Chicago active with catchy. Hey y'all. Okay, so boom. Me and the Bird family, we done took off from the receptionist desk. We done ran down the damn hallway. We get into the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, something run into the elevator. The whole fucking elevator shook, baby. I am terrified. Mama Bird lady sit up here and press the 13th floor. Now my heart is in my throat, because out of all the fucking floors for us to go to, why are we on 13? Oh my lord. We get off the elevator, walking down the hallway. Mama Bird stopping in front of one of these doors. The door, I see this motherfucker got 1333. Whoa, don't you dare. Don't you open that damn door. She said, what's wrong? Bitch, it's a trap. What you mean, what's wrong? We on the 13th floor. It's 333 on the damn door. And if you add the 1 to it, that's 10. That's the devil mark, bitch. You tripping. You better not open that motherfucker. She jumped back from the door. Don't even get close to the threshold. Y'all, come this way. Come this way, y'all. I gotta figure something out. Give me a second. I gotta think. Little girl say they coming up the stairs. Oh my, you can feel them? She said, I can hear them. I have really good hearing. Okay, we on the 13th floor. We got a little bit of time. I got to figure out something. The mama sit up here. She talk about some, oh, I feel a contraction. No, the fuck you don't. Oh, no, hell no, boy. If you don't get your ass over there and keep that baby and your motherfucking wife, oh my God. I am panicking. And the only thing that I can think of is to pick up my phone. Hello? Godmama Evangeline? Help me, please. She discombobulated as fuck. What the hell going on? Where you at? What's happening? Who did it? I tell her to run down on the lowdown. She say, how in the fuck did you wind up? Catherine Jesus fucking Christ. Whoa. Pause. Ma'am, you don't curse at me unless I fucked up, and you for damn sure don't say my government name. Let me tell you something. I didn't ask for none of this. She said, obviously you did, because I did everything I could to keep you off that troll bridge tonight. I promise you I did everything I could to keep you from over there. Why the hell is you over there? Ma'am, why you ain't never tell me it was a troll bridge? Now, crickets, silence. Oh, don't get quiet now. That's not the point. Yes, the fuck it is the point. Because guess what? If your ass would have told me it was a troll bridge over here, I would have never came my ass over here. Now, we in this bullshit. See, y'all got me blind in the fucking universe. I'm just out here raw dog in the universe. I ain't got no seeing eye cane, no seeing eye dog, just nothing. You just got me out here feeling the ether, and I don't like it. You can put it in a book, and I'm gonna read the whole damn book. You wanna know why? Because I'm the only black person in history who actually read the manual. So you know what? I don't got time for this shit. And I would say blame your mama, but I ain't got time to be hearing her in the spirit realm. Listen, this is what I need you to do. Go around the corner, go to 1355. 14, freedom. Got it. Let's go. Mr. Birdman inside of here picked his wife up off the floor. I grabbed the little girl because she the littlest. Little boy holding on to my hand. As soon as he grabbed my hand, the damn door behind me get the rattling. That's the door to the stairwell. The little girl say, they're here. Uh-huh. You think? Why couldn't you tell me that they was closer like 5 minutes ago, ma'am? You know what? We can't focus on that right now. Matter of fact, the only thing we need to focus on is one phrase, 3 words, needs to just. Let's get to going, people. Come on, we gotta go. But see, that's the problem. There is another problem. This is the Sheraton Hotel. This motherfucker is huge. I mean, it is huge, okay? It take up a whole block and a half, and the other half of the block is a goddamn parking lot. This bitch is massive. They don't have hallways, they have corridors. And at that time, I was fatter and asthmatic. So yeah, running for a long time wasn't working for me. But thank God the little boy seen the room before I did. We stop, we go. It's a nice little suite. It's got 2 bedrooms, a living room area, 2 bathrooms. One is in a master suite. The phone on the table get the ringing. I pick it up, it's Miss Evangeline. She said, hey, your cell phone not gonna work in there no more. I look at my cell phone, no bars, no Wi-Fi. Panic just moved up a little bit more. She said, yeah, I need you to do this ritual and seal the door. If I seal the door, I'm not going to be able to get up out of here. She said, yeah, you're going to have to stay there for the night. No, ma'am. What the hell? Hell, why? Evangeline said, you know what? For once, I don't know why. I don't know why the universe wants you so bad. Because I did everything I could to keep you and Lily away from this damn contract. But here you are by yourself working the fucking contract. A contract? So what is you, secret ops master now? Like what? Why you just can't put the shit in the book so I can know what the fuck is going on? She said, because if somebody get a hold of you and they get a hold of your brain, they gonna know everything. I can't have them having the key to the universe and ultimate knowledge, girl. Just sit the fuck back and do what the hell I tell you to do and learn what I tell you to learn when I tell you to learn it. Well, you ain't telling me to learn nothing and now I'm in deep shit. So how the fuck is that working out? Evangeline say, you know what, touche. Okay, listen, put the wardens on the door. You're gonna have to sleep that tonight. I can't help you. Otherwise, you're gonna have hellhounds on your ass. It's a few different types of hellhounds. This particular hellhound that I seen, it looked like it was made out of rocks and moss. And it was absolutely vicious and terrifying. I don't want to run into it again. Okay? So you said I gotta stay here for the night, fine. I mean, I'm fucking stuck. I tell her I'm finna call my boyfriend, tell him where I'm at. She say, nah, I got you. Just stay there. Don't touch the phone. Ward the door. Ward all the windows. Ward everything that can open. Any mirror, cover all the mirrors. Sleep on the couch tonight. And just have half sleep. One eye open, okay? It's gonna get rough. Well, around 3:30, everybody is asleep except for me. I'm just laying here on my back on this fucking couch wondering how the hell did I get here? And who made a deal for me to be sold to the universe to be the motherfucking warrior of the damn century? Because I specifically don't remember asking for none of this shit, okay? Y'all may say, yes, you did, Kat. When you asked for superpowers, I asked for superpowers. I didn't ask for super drama, okay? Damn it, shit. Now, as I'm laying there, now I'm just, meditating. I hear tapping on the window right next to me. The thing can't see in, but I can see out. And what I see, I don't want to fucking see. It's some type of bird-looking gremlin thing climbing across the windowsill. I hear it chanting something, and the only thing I can think of to myself is, Holy Mother, send something to take this away from this window. And then I heard a big ass shriek, almost mixed with a growl. I turned over on my stomach just to get a glimpse of a gargoyle diving down and snatching the little creature off of the windowsill and flying across the damn lake. I want out of here! I want out! A little while after that, I heard somebody trying to use the key to get in the door. Well, as soon as they swiped the little thing, it blew them back into the wall, because can't nobody get in here except for us and the Holy Mother. I know they say there ain't no sleep for the wicked, but I'm not wicked. I'm just hard-headed. Like, I need to sleep. The minute I do get to sleep, somebody come banging on the damn door. Scared me awake. I'm laying on my stomach, so I turn on my back. Now I'm finna fucking have a heart attack because a little bird girl is on the back of the couch looking down in my ass like she's some type of bird of fucking prey. Girl, I ought to punch you in the face. In the beak. She says, good morning. The troll escort is here. Okay, let's go. We open up the doors, these big ass. When I say these big ass men, baby, they are fucking huge. Matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you what they look. Him, Mr. Bubbles from Lilo and Stitch, they was just white men with a little bit of hair. Like the military hair that comb over a little bit. Yeah, that's what they look like. Terrifying. I found out that Daddy Birdman is actually a crown prince, and when he married this woman, they got pregnant. That's actually his first kid. The 2 kids that's there, they're her kids from a previous marriage, but now that he has his own kid coming, somebody from wherever the hell they from, they didn't like that, so they wanted to kill them off because they didn't want him to have an heir to the throne, because as soon as the baby was born, that would instantly make him king, and the baby is the next heir. No bueno. So now they're in witness protection and they're here somewhere. Every now and then I go and I talk to them, but I can't tell you where they are. And yeah, the end. Okay, thank you. Bye. Telling y'all about the bird shifter family made me remember about how I was partying with centaurs out in Cicero, Illinois. Let's talk about it. Boom, boom, it's story time. Boom, boom, paranormal Chicago active with Cat G. Yes, centaurs. Half human, half horse. Well, horse shifters. And I met this one centaurian at Columbia College in downtown Chicago. I did not go to Columbia College, but my god sister went to Columbia College. And baby, when I tell you I was always in that joint, it was people who thought that I went to the school. It was crazy. But I met her in the fashion department. Now, just to protect her identity, I am not going to use her real name, so I'm going to just call her Ashley. Ashley was working on this pantsuit, but y'all, for a college student, this pantsuit was everything. The fabric was made from a black greenish velvet, you know, like the black color that kind of like shimmer and fade into green. It's got a suit jacket and these pants, and then this really pretty emerald green shirt up under it. Right? I instantly fell in love because the fabric also looked like it got shimmers all through it. I love shiny things. She's currently working on the back of the suit jacket. She's pinning a cape onto it. She spun it around, and baby, I'm in absolute love. She see me in the window. She motioned me to come in. She asked me what I think about it. I tell her what I think about it. She get to talking about it, asking me if I should change some stuff. And I'm like, no, it's absolutely perfect. It looked like it'll perfectly fit on me. And then she looked at me and looked at the suit and was like, you want to try it on? Hell yeah, I want to try it on. She like, perfect. I need a size 18 model. So come on. We finna try this on right now. We try it on, baby. It fit like a glove. I'm talking about this sucker is perfect. When I come out the little fitting room, she take a deep breath. You know, she gasped. And then she like, don't move. I'll be right back. And she take off running. But this girl ran. I'm talking about she took off. Key in my naive brain just thinking, you know, it's fast humans, whatever. She come back maybe 10 minutes later, out of breath. She got a bag full of stuff on her arm. She like, look, I got all these accessories. Please tell me you a size 10 shoe. I'm like, yeah, why? She like, okay, good. Because I got a perfect shoe for you. Listen, I need you as a model. I haven't found a model that could fit the clothing the way that I need them to fit them. And boom, here you are. I'm thinking to myself like, girl, you don't think I just heard you mistakenly say you can't find a human? Oh, fuck. A part of my brain is trying to figure out how the hell to get up out of this situation. Another part of my brain is like, this woman is talking about a little brand deal. We getting free accessories and clothes and shoes, and you want to run away? No. Like a dun, I stayed. But I was glad that I stayed because I wound up working with her for like 4 or 5 months. She finished up her line or whatever. And the day before she was gonna have her lunch party, she decided to have a little kickback at her house. Okay, she sent me the address. I ain't too happy because it's way out in Cicero, Illinois. I'm sorry, I'm a little black girl. It may not be too safe out there for me, but you know what? I got you. And on top of that, she was black too, so you know, I felt like I was in good hands. I don't got no bad vibes. I'm pretty sure some part of some universe in this brain of mine would have went off if I was in immediate danger. I hope. Now, I'm on my way out there. I get on the bus. It's a PACE bus. See, Chicago has 2 different systems. It's the CTA and then the PACE bus. The PACE bus service the Chicagoland area, which is the suburb. Where the driver sits, it has like a compartment behind it that you can't see into. But it has doors and stuff right there, which would be the reason why that space is being taken up. But this space is a bit too much. Like, it's not the normal amount of space that's usually behind the driver's seat. You know what I mean? Normal people wouldn't probably notice that it was bigger, but I notice every damn thing. And something is off about it. When I get fully onto the bus and I'm gonna pay my fare, the way that the man was sitting in the chair, like his back was too close to the back of the chair. Like, you know, you can see the little curve in your back, or it's a small little space in between your shoulders and the back of the chair, because, you know, the space for your butt. Like, nobody's actually sitting directly up in a 90-degree angle straight back in a bus driver's chair. It ain't gonna look right. And it didn't look right. Like, it looked like he was bending wrong to even sit like that. But you know what? Mind your business, girl. Mind your business. I get to Ashley house and listen. Something, I don't know how to say this, but some very churchy black families tend to be on the heavier side. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? A little bit more cushion for the pushing, a lot of love to get out. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with being on the plus side. But the way that they were shaped, baby, everybody put the dunk in the trunk. Do you hear me? I'm talking about they got cakes from here to Kalamazoo. When I say everybody got ass, everybody got ass. Perfect, round, sitting up, shelf. They walking like stallions. They legs long, thighs thick but toned. They not sloppy looking. This a different type of big people. Then I get to notice in the food. It's one or two meat items, a couple burgers, couple hot links, couple chicken wings. That's it. However, the sides, baby, they got the sides down packed. And that's my type of people, because, like, if you know me in real life, I don't really eat meat that much. I'm a side eater. That's what I do. Mac and cheese, greens, yams, a little spaghetti, some type of pasta salad. Yes, that's where I'm at. Every now and then I'm gonna go and get me a burger or a link or something, but give me all the damn side. And there's one particular song come on, it's a line dance. I ain't never heard this song before, but all these people get up and they get to doing the damn line dance. Now, here's the thing. They doing the line dance on dirt and grass, but it sound like hoofs is shaking the earth. Baby, I am Confucian. I know what the hell I hear. Why my eyeballs not seeing what my ears is hearing? Ashley see me sitting there looking at the people doing the line dance, and she come up to me. She said, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And I look at her. Her eyes are a different color. When we first got here, they was brown. Now they green, but they like lush green. Okay. All right. I think I'm gonna go. She like, "What? No, you gotta stay." And then she go off into all the reasons why I need to stay. But then this song start playing. Now, here's the problem. Songs have frequencies. And yes, you can control people through songs, because those frequencies fuck with your brain. That's why, even though I'm from Chicago, I don't dabble in drill music, because I know that it's set to a frequency to make people violent. Now, because music has such different abilities when it comes to the uses of frequencies, this particular song helps me break through the glamour that Ashley put on me. Well, shit, really put on the whole damn school before I even got to the house. One of the rawest things about shifters is that they have the ability to get these charms, talismans, or horcrux, if you will, and they will put them in the places that they frequent the most, so that the place is consistently under a glamour and you only see them for what they want you to see them at. But this song's frequency is messing with the glamour. I'm starting to see through the cracks. There was a lady standing at a high top table. She got the laughing. When she was laughing, she hit the table and stomped her foot, but I heard a hoof. When the beat in the song dropped again, she stomped her foot and I can see hoofs, because the glamour is breaking. Ashley looked at me, she said, "Are you okay?" I said, I think I should really go. At that moment, her brother walked up and he like, "No, you can't leave. I was finna make my way over here to you. What you mean you leaving now?" I look up at him. His eyes turned from brown to green. I said, "Oh my Lord." I take my feet out of my sandals, plant my feet flat on the ground, and I say, "Show me what I need to be seen, Holy Mother." And all the lights in the backyard went out. The DJ booth Nope. The string lights kicked in first, then the music. I opened my eyes and now I'm looking at horse people. I looked at her. I said, oh, what the fuck? She said, what the fuck? Me? No ma'am. Who the fuck are you? Great. The universe just revealed shifters to me. I guess I'm on another task. Here we go into the next part. But
we listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of when my uncle bought a haunted house and he immediately sold it. So my uncle had just bought a house, whatever, and they were constantly telling my mom that they feel like there's something in that house because they hear loud thumps, they this, they that, they that. And I did not believe it. I was like, they are lying, you know what I mean? They just want to stress you out. You know, they maybe probably just want to come here and visit, because they were suggesting that they come stay in my mom's house while they look for a buyer for that house. So fine, I tell them like I don't believe them, and my mom is like, if you don't believe them, go there and find out for yourself and see if it's real. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go, because I thought I was bad. I was 13 at this time. Fine, I go visit my uncle's place, whatever, and I'm sleeping with my cousin, whatever. We're talking at night, and she's like, it's I think it was about 2 a.m. when we were still up, and she's like, girl, I think it's time for us to sleep because at 3 a.m. this thing starts working. And I'm like, what thing? She's like, there's a thing that starts working. I was like, you go to sleep, I want to hear it, girl. Hi, my cousin is like, hi, okay. She had trained herself that at a certain time her body needs to be tired, whether it likes it or not. She fell asleep and I stayed up. I was busy with my phone and I heard goo on the roof. I'm like, what? It's probably rats. I was scared. Goo, 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 goo. I was like, no man, it's probably rats. There's no way there's a ghost in this house. No, baby. The thing jumped off the roof and I heard goo. You know, there was a loud thump this time because it was both its feet. I'm like, wait, what? This thing opened the door. I was like, wait, that's not a rat. It opened the door. I don't know how, but it opened the front door and it went inside. Because my cousin's room is not far from the front door, it went inside. It seemed like somebody was unlocking a door. Like that person had a key. And I'm like, yo. I couldn't even say it was a human being because that was very loud. Like that person was very loud. And as they're walking in the house, you can hear, man, that this person is just stomping their feet. And then they close the door and they start walking towards my cousin's room. I'm like, wait, hold on, you coming here? I jumped into the bed and I closed my eyes so tight. And this person opened the door and started like peeking. And then walked inside and started taking my cousin's clothes out of the wardrobe. I kid you not. I was like, what? Because I kept on like peeking, like I wanted to see, and it was just pulling the clothes out, pulling the things out of the wardrobe, throwing them on the ground. It felt like a dream. Went out, went inside the bathroom, opened all of the taps, started opening the taps, went out, went I think into the parents' room. I'm not sure because I just heard a door. I'm not sure what door it was. Went to the parents' room, started taking out things, throwing shoes and all of that. Went into the kitchen, opened everything, started throwing things out. And then after that, it opened the bread tin. The bread tin was metal, so I could hear it open because it was doing everything aggressively. Took the bread out, and I don't know what it did, but it was just crazy, right? Eventually, I fell asleep because this thing went out. Locked the door, guys. Locked the butler. Went out. Went on top of the roof. Disappeared. You know. And I was like, yo, like I couldn't sleep after that. I held my cousin's hand and I fell asleep. Woke up in the morning and there was clothes everywhere. It was a mess. The couches were upside down, the clothes were on the floor, the thingies were everything, like the guys in the kitchen, there was food on the floor, the bread was out, the bread was gone by the way, but there was food on the floor. It was just disgusting in the kitchen. It was also like there was water, and then in the bathroom they closed the door, like they closed the water after this thing leaves. And then there was like what? It was just disgusting in the kitchen, y'all. There was clothes on the floor. There was food in the kitchen. There was like utensils on the floor. The plates were on the floor, broken. You know, there was stuff on. There was like tomatoes, the onions, everything was out on the floor, and there was water as well. It smelled terrible at that. And then I was like, yo, these people were really not lying. There's something that stays in this house. And then that day, guys, I told my mom, like, hey, these people are serious. There is something in this house. Something came in this house and it took the things out. And my mom was like, yeah, I'm not coming to fetch you. I want you to stay there and suffer. I was like, girl, she was like, she's joking. She told the uncle to go to a certain traditional healer and they're going, oh, guys, oh, biggest mistake of their life. They go to this traditional healer. This traditional healer tells them, listen, for this thing to actually stop bothering you, just cook for it and leave leave its plate there. They did exactly that, and this thing would come in every day, obviously at 3, and I stayed there for like the weekend. This thing it was Saturday when we woke up and I saw the things on the ground, and then they started cooking for this thing and it never bothered them. And then I think a couple of years later, when they finished paying the house off, because my uncle has like a really good job, y'all. When they finished paying off the house, they were cooking for a zombie, this traditional healer zombie. They were cooking for it. You know, I told you I have an aunt who's a prophet, right? That aunt went to go visit these people, and she was like, "Why are you cooking for this lady's zombie?" When she entered the house, I love that aunt. So I was with her. She was like, "Why are you cooking for the zombie?" And they were like, "That's what this traditional healer told us to do." And she was like, "No, this lady was basically fighting with this family. You know, she is a family member of the people who sold you this house. So she's mad because these people have this house and she wanted the house. So you guys made a mistake by going to her." And they were like, "My mom is the one that referred to them." And they called my mom and they told her, obviously. But then my mom was like, "I didn't know that this lady is this. Like, I thought she was a good person because she's been helping me, you know." And so they told her like this, "No, man, this lady is basically using you guys to store her zombie here. You know, she thought maybe if she can't beat the family by getting this house, she's going to make people that stay here suffer. So you guys are cooking for her zombie, a zombie that's doing bad things. And one day when this zombie that she's using to do bad things outside, when those people realize that the zombie stays here and everything that this lady is doing, right? This zombie is eating here, right? And going to do bad things at people's homes. Now imagine if those bad people find out that you guys are the ones that are hoarding the zombie here." Because she was like, "The zombie stays here, but you guys don't know it. The zombie stays in the roof of this house." If those people, say for example, this zombie is sent to me to do something bad to me, and my mom is like, "Take it back to sender," she told my uncle that you guys are the ones that are going to suffer. And so my aunt did her things. They went inside the roof. You know, almost in every house, if there's when there's a ceiling and then there's a roof, there's a space in between, and there's a thing that goes a trap door, I think that's what they call it, where you can go inside that trap door and search. My aunt started doing their things, and she found a bottle with a doll inside, and she's like, "Aibo, basically the person that is inside there is one of the family members' sons that she found in there." So this lady has been using the family members' sons to do things like to do such things. And so my uncle was like, "Yo, that is crazy." So they went back to the people that they bought this house at, and they told them what had been happening. And the family members was like, "Yeah, that traditional healer is from our family. She's been traumatizing us and all of that." And my aunt helped them, and then she helped my uncle as well. And then these people were like, "Listen, we need that house back. This was our family house. We sold it because we had no choice." My uncle was like, "Listen, I am willing to give you guys this house back, sell it back to you guys, because I'm not about to go through what I went through. I want to be done with your guys' family. I understand that it's not all of y'all that are terrible, but hey, I'm good." So my uncle sold the house back, and then he bought another house, which was cool. And I was like, buy houses, but research first. Go to people in that area and ask, because even in my area, we have a haunted house that there are no tenants in that house, but the light switches on its own every day. So I say be careful before buying houses. Go around the neighborhood, ask people like, "What kind of house is that? Is that a good house?" Because people will laugh when you ask them about a haunted house. Okay?
Get comfy and cozy. Spooky scary story time. It was early summer in 1999. Driving back to Murray as early evening approached. My 3 kids were with me. As we were almost right at Lake Barkley Bridge, a storm that had been steadily building suddenly went intense. The sky darkened. There was a sudden chill. The air went still. Just an eerie feeling. I got this creepy, almost superstitious fear that I should get through LBL back to Murray as fast as possible before that storm broke. But I knew that there was no way we'd make that. Anyway, the little area right at the first bridge into LBL is known as Fenton. Right there, and I can't explain this. There, off the side of the road, was a Conestoga wagon. Weirdly, the cover of the wagon and the horses in front were all purely white. I'm talking a pristine, almost shining bright, glowy white. A man was sitting in the reins. He didn't look our way, just sitting there, involuntarily. I slowed down as we passed, calling to my kids in the back seat. Y'all see that? We were passing a moment, and both older kids, youngest still baby, said they hadn't seen anything unusual, and definitely not a wagon. In that moment, right after we passed the wagon, that storm broke. It was crazy awful. But we made it through the storm and LBL home safe. I've wondered since, what the heck did I see? I even thought maybe the wagon was there for a reenactment of some historical event and have pulled off because of the storm. Which made me think it may have been paranormal was the unnatural white of its cover and the horses. Unless brand new, no canvas covers would be as white as that. And 2 matching white horses? I'll never really know what I saw.
What would you do if you moved into a new house and it slowly started ruining your relationship? Scary story time. A little over a year ago, my husband and I lived in a tiny house while we were trying to get our finances together to get a new home. When we first moved in, everything was great. It was a very cozy and homey house, and we were pleasantly happy with it for the time being. A couple of months after moving in, weird things started happening. There was stuff moved around that we knew for sure wasn't there in the first place. It was weird, but we brushed it off and joked that it was just our friendly ghost playing games with us. Soon after, we both started seeing shadows out of our peripheral vision, and every time we turned to look, nothing was there. We woke up once and all the cabinets were open, and I got mad at my husband because I thought he was playing a prank on me. But then the argument started. It was like a weekly argument. We would be completely fine 1 minute, and then all of a sudden, I would start random arguments. Looking back now, they were some of the absolute dumbest reasons to start a fight. The constant argument led to both of us being completely drained, and we even talked about divorce, but ultimately decided to push through and stay together. There was one night after an argument where I decided to stay in the living room while my husband stayed in the bedroom. It was late, the room was dark, and the only light I had was from the TV. I was just sitting there when all of a sudden I felt like someone was standing next to me. I thought it was my husband, but when I turned, I saw a tall black figure just standing there watching me. I jumped, and in a blink, it was gone. I ran to my husband and told him I saw something in the living room. He immediately asked me if it was a tall black figure. He told me that just weeks before, he had seen the exact same shadow figure. We moved out of the house in April of last year, and our new house fortunately has 0 ghosts. My husband and I rarely argue now. We still have disagreements like any couple, but nothing like how it used to be. I honestly can't even remember the last time we had a fight. I do get constant sleep paralysis, and that's the only time I ever see things in our new house. But that's pretty normal for me. I truly don't know if the bad energy in that tiny house was messing with our relationship, but I do know that the couple who moved in after us actually ended up getting divorced, and they no longer talk to each other. I have so many stories to tell, and hopefully I can in some other time. And that's the end of the story. So do you think the place that you live in can actually affect your relationships, your way of life, your peace? I definitely think a house can absolutely make or break your existence in that place for sure. Have you had any experiences with places that you've lived at before, whether it be a home, an apartment, a mobile home, a camper, a tent somewhere in the park? But yeah, have you had any experiences in anywhere where you're staying at for a long period of time that you felt absolutely affected your life negatively? Let's talk about it. Let me know.
Bro, what's going on around?
You got your late night snack. This is Last Thread Before Bed, episode 38. This is a little series where I read scary stories from Reddit before I go to bed, and I try not to get nightmares. So boom, let's get into it. So this story is in the Real Ghost Stories subreddit thread. Also, my dog is going to town with her bone. Please don't mind her. So this story is from user I'm okay, no thanks. And this story is called My Continuous and Very Frightening Experience of Goatman's Bridge, Denton, Texas. Hi, for reference, I'm a 24-year-old female. Okay, I'm gonna start out by apologizing for not adding any photos, tangible proof, or deep history lessons here. I would appreciate if you all could not accuse me of lying or being mentally ill. This is 100% true. You must take me at my word because this is still an ongoing experience in me, and I'm physically affected every day by ongoing nausea, especially when I look at the photos or talk about the history of this haunted place. I'm trying my best to avoid making matters worse. I feel grueling resistance as I'm typing this. I'm fighting the nausea right at this moment, so I hope you can understand. Girl, what did you go through? I'm ready for this one. Last Sunday was Father's Day. I was with my boyfriend, my mom, and my dad, sitting at the dinner table eating, when the topic of ghost hunting came up. My boyfriend, let's call him B, and I love this type of thing. Neither of us are particularly religious. We are a couple of open-minded, curious agnostics, so the idea that spirits could exist and possibly show themselves to us excites us very much. We had heard about this Goatman's Bridge, officially called Old Alton Bridge, from a couple sources, Friends, Ghost Adventures TV show, and other articles online. We also live relatively close to the location. Please look up the history yourself. Just Google Goatman's Bridge, Denton history. I will tell you, it is Triple K related gruesome violence leading to the death of a successful African American that lived nearby. Every time I read about it now, I feel like I'm going to puke. Yeah, the history behind Goatman's Bridge is very sick and twisted, and it is very disgusting and horrible. So anyways, we decided to go. My dad has never encountered a spirit before, and this place seemed to be a very popular spot for ghost hunting. We went at about 10 p.m., a prime time to explore the bridge and hike the trails with little interruption. The bridge at first was empty and seemed a bit spooky, but we didn't see anything out of the ordinary there. We then hiked a couple of different trails nearby. The first one was completely fine, no activity. The second trail, we saw a pair of glowing eyes in the distance when I shone my flashlight in that direction. We all think it was a deer though. Third trail, we came up to this very scary looking graffiti covered structure. It had words like "We all die." It had 2 pentagrams within the letters of that. There were stars across the top of it with fake blood dripping from every other one. Are you sure it was fake? It also had a number of symbols and words that none of us or Google Lens could decipher, although we all did see my nickname, Jen, written slightly hidden with another acronym. I forgot what it was, and I'm not going to look at the pictures anyways right now, sorry. Later, B had dug some more online and found out that the structure is actually an altar that had been used for animal sacrifice. It is still being used in rituals by a modern group called the Dark Triple K. You guys know what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to actually say what it is just because I don't want my video to get removed. All in all, the most exciting part about going to the place itself was me tripping over a root and bruising both my knees. Yeah, so kind of boring. The only paranormal activity the 3 of us had witnessed was my dad expressing he felt an unexplainable quick tap on his back a few yards from the altar. So we go back to the bridge, and to our surprise, about 4 or 5 men, white, early 20s, were sitting on the spider-infested bridge, smoking cigarettes and remaining unusually silent. I honestly don't know why anyone would hang out there at midnight and not have flashlights or anything, but hey, maybe they're kind of weird, who knows. I didn't have a very good feeling about them though. As soon as I got in the car, I feel like I was going to puke. I was not sick with any illness. I'm not sick now either. At first, I believed I was in a visceral reaction to the haunted place. Now, I know it was and is something more. When we got home, I was in immense pain, unspeakable, excruciating nausea. I went to wash my hands in the bathroom. When I looked at my reflection, I didn't recognize myself. I was looking into someone else's eyes. I met the gaze of something violent. Someone with immense hate. It was not my reflection. Rather be someone or something was using my body to see through me. I know it sounds crazy, but it just gets crazier. I apologize on some of these upcoming details. I was not in control of my body or mind at this time. My memory of this part is almost dreamlike. B could see something had changed in me, told me to lie down because the nausea was making me lightheaded and very dizzy. I remember B asking me a series of questions. I don't remember most, but I do remember saying that I am not Jen. I remember how my hate-filled gaze felt resting on B's eyes. I remember my dog not coming over to me like she usually does. I remember telling B that I was unsure of whether he should say or not because I was afraid I would hurt him. Physically, I felt extremely violent to the point that I was digging my nails into my hands as hard as I could, but felt no pain. Girl, don't waste any more time. Just call the priest. I remember wanting to break his hand when I was holding it. I remember fixating on a wall filled with old photos of my ancestors and having a feeling that whatever is in me is trying to learn how to become me. I still think that last feeling I mentioned is lingering in me even today. The next day I woke up and couldn't shake the thought that I had this new body. I think whatever took over my body is mostly gone. It's a possibility that I may in fact be haunting my own psyche since that night as a reaction to try to cope. But both B and I know that something took hold of me that night, and I am paying for that every day now. By the way, I took pictures on my DSLR, some with flash and without. In almost every photo, if you zoomed all the way in, you could see at least one strange looking pixel lurking in different parts of the photo. I have absolutely no clue if this is a camera-related issue or not, but I become more physically ill the longer I look at them. Does anyone know if this is normal for taking a raw night's photo on a Canon Rebel T3i? The red dots showed up in both images with flash and without flash, so totally dark. So as you know, B did more digging on Google after this whole thing, and he actually found that women typically have had stronger paranormal experiences or reactions to Goatman's Bridge. If anyone has a good cure for nausea besides Pepto or green stuff, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, cures for getting rid of these lingering psychological effects that resulted from that night would be nice too. Open any discussion or questions, recommendations, thanks. Sounds to me like whatever the case may be, I think an exorcism needs to be involved. I'm sorry, and it sounds like you're having a very rough time, but this is very scary. Try not to get nightmares, y'all, because this one was a pretty scary story, and this girl's obviously going through a lot, so follow for more scary stories.